Okay, today is July 27th work session meeting. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Schneider.
Here.
Casanello.
Here.
Pater. Here. Larson.
Here.
Shannon.
Here.
Morris.
Here.
Weir.
Here.
Okay, do I got to mention anything about the Zoom, or are we good? Okay, as you know, Bob's on Zoom. We'll pledge allegiance. Okay, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll go on to the agenda items. First agenda item is the museum agreement, plan and displays.
So first up, I was going to invite Haymarket Coffee Company to come up and give a little presentation to the council regarding what they want to do over at the museum. And then after that, if you guys have any questions for them or staff specifically, feel free to ask us, and then we'll go into the additional museum discussion after that. So I'll invite up Randy and Chris.
And before they start their discussion, I wanted to fully disclose that my wife and Chris's wife are best friends, so any type of discussion and voting I'd be staying out of.
Mr. Mayor, if I may also say, this is going to be an informal meeting essentially because
Yes.
it's a work session, so I'll just jump right in. Just so the gentlemen understand, we take no action tonight. We're here to listen and read whatever you have to give us, and then it'll probably be, what, next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for the time. We appreciate it. Can everybody hear me fine?
Yes.
Can everybody hear? Okay. I guess I have to get a little bit closer.
You can pick it up if you want. It's okay.
You can walk.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't get me started. My name is Chris Morton, and my business partner is Randy Payton. We've known each other for over a decade. We've actually used to train doing marathons. Of course, you can tell that I have stopped running marathons, and he's still running marathons. We started a coffee company back in September, and we had a great day at Haymarket Day. It was our first major event, and we were extremely well received. We roast our own coffee. We import. Actually, we do our own importing. We are a single point of origin. We buy direct from the coffee farmer. We don't go through a co-op or a benefit. Everything is direct. And we roast right now in Winchester, Virginia. Eventually, we'd like to obviously have a brick and mortar place here established to do our roasting here in Haymarket. We came up and proposed an opportunity to have shared space, what we would consider a private-public type partnership, where we could operate on the weekends, opening the museum and driving more traffic through the museum to learn more about the town of Haymarket, primarily looking at providing what's happened that month in the history of Haymarket, and actually then amplifying that and actually explaining that to customers when they come in, answer questions about the town, actually be more of a custodian of the history of Haymarket. But at the same time, we would also like to represent our coffee company and provide them with refreshments and potentially baked goods while they're there, and they can go on the back deck. So the first part of that is just to get everybody involved with understanding what is Haymarket and what happened on this month, even if it goes week by week. But I'm not sure that there's that much happening yet. I haven't dug back down into the history. And then the other part is to actually develop a walking town. So to get more people in the morning trafficking through the town, coming out and seeing who their neighbors are, being more collaborative with their neighbors, in addition to understanding more about the history. So that's our proposal in a very high level, and we're here to answer any questions.
Maybe share with them your ideas on like the hours you would expect to be there and the monthly commitment.
Sure. We're looking at early morning because people usually don't drink coffee in the afternoon or evening. So we would be between 6 and 1 and have the doors completely open. We could even go to 6 to 2 and every weekend, just on Saturdays and Sundays to start off with, to see what type of traffic we can generate. And if we can generate more traffic, then we'd be more than happy to provide it more times during the week. Right now, it's our understanding that the museum doors are only open 2 to 4 times a year. We would be able to open it, at least 104 times a year. So it's not only, again, driving the understanding of Haymarket and the history of Haymarket, but it's also developing community collaboration between every neighbor. So that's our point.
Real quick,
So, I'm sorry. I'd be glad to ask, first of all, any alterations or anything needs to be done over there?
so
If so, who's paying for that?
So just a real quick thing I'm going to pass out. This is our one copy, so I would like to get it back. But if you see here, this is the museum layout. And in this upper corner, you have your front door, and then there's the corner right when you walk into your left. That's kind of where we would set them up. But as you'll see in that diagram, our current intern who's working on doing all the historic displays and coming up with our information to get professionally printed, came up with this diagram that would allow us to have the museum open and operating as the historic, the wealth of knowledge there. And then Haymarket Coffee would come in, potentially bring in a couple tables and chairs, which they would provide, and then they would work around what we have in place as the display. This will also allow us to go in and, on a quarterly basis, we can change out our displays. But that way, since we have that foot traffic in there, we have more reason to come in, change it out. We can even work with them to kind of get feedback from our citizens if they want to learn more about different topics. But we would put in the historic display portions, any additional tables, chairs, things of that nature they would bring in.
Okay, so no expense to the town.
Correct. The
Okay.
town would only be...
I think it's a great idea.
The town would only be expending money on updating our displays, so...
Which we should.
Yeah, so,
Anyway.
and I'll talk about that more coming up with what I have of how we're going to look at updating and really getting a professional look to our displays.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my question had been, Councilman Chair, my question had been about insurance. So I guess our insurance were already covered. If they'll have their own insurance as part of that, or how does that work?
This is not very different from what Emily had previously done with the arts that came in for the short period of time, except this would be a more long-term agreement and arrangement. And just to Councilmember Shannon's point, with additional use with the bathroom and things like that, if something were to happen, it would be the town's responsibility to fix the toilets or the water, air conditioner, things like that.
That's maintenance and
Yeah,
upkeep,
but
which I
it would be
understand.
nothing more than regular maintenance.
Okay.
Is what the assumption would be.
I think it's a great idea.
Just as a note, we carry our own insurance also. So we have a multi-million-dollar liability policy. We currently operate in multiple farmers markets, just trying to do marketing. So we would actually assign as a member of that insurance at the Haymarket Council.
Were there initial lease terms discussed already, or how long were we planning to do the arrangement?
It's pretty much, it's all wide open.
Would you be breaking everything down weekly, bringing it, or are you storing it within the facility? Like any of your tables that you're bringing in?
I mean, that, all of that's up in the air. I mean,
Okay.
we can be completely mobile like we are now. It would be easier if we could leave some of it there, but all of our stuff is definitely mobile and removable.
I kind of equated it to what you did on Haymarket Day, which you bring all the thermoses in, you're kind of a self-sort of
Oh,
sustained.
really? So I can just chime in whenever? Okay, good.
Started it, so it's...
Quiet, Captain. First of all, thank you for showing interest in the town. And thank you for even just looking at a property like this that we have and thinking outside of the box what we could do for it. I have 4 points. One of my first point has to do with codes. If any codes are violated, and with the, is that me?
No, you're fine. We'll figure it out. Sorry.
With, I know one question asked before is, would the town be responsible for any upgrades? But if there are any code issues or any violations thereof, would you be responsible for ensuring, because you did mention using the deck, there's a possibility of also using the old caboose? Was that part of it, Ms. Ag?
That started the original conversation.
But it's not,
But basically, after the conversations, that didn't seem viable, so that's
Okay.
where we decided to try and move it into the museum.
So
But
I-
yes, so that would be something that we would address in the agreement for their usage of the museum. So this way, if they violated anything, that's
okay.
what would end up
So,
being addressed.
so
there.
back to the codes, if we have to bring that area, because it's town-owned, up to a level that meets Prince William County's code of ethics or code of operations, are we the ones responsible for bringing it up to code, or is it the leasing?
So at this time, we do not foresee any building code issues with how the museum, just as it is today, is operational. We have our ADA access to include ADA access to the bathroom. We have the working lights. It's, air conditioned, those things. So we don't foresee any of those issues coming up. But if it were, I think the onus would fall on us as the town, because we are also opening it as a museum again.
True. But to open it as a museum for individuals to walk through and visit, it's a different criteria than, let's say, with inclement weather, to have the bathrooms available for patrons. That brings in a different level of codes, because then the number of tables you put inside dictates, if you need one bathroom or two. So I think we need to probably just give it some more thoughts as far as in opening it up now. If we do have 10, 15, 20 people inside, does that open us up now to having to make it meet a higher requirement, which we know it doesn't exist right now?
So, correct. So we have looked into that, and I believe one of our initial discussions was when we went from looking at the caboose and what it had as capacity, and then we played around with the idea of the museum, was automatically off the bat, we wanted a certain level of our displays to still be shown to include the tables that we have for our artifacts. And so that strictly limited how many seats were available for inside. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when we first looked at it, it was a maximum of eight people to sit inside, I believe.
Yeah.
So we did already start that discussion, but we will further it and see, what code changes, if any, are required.
And of course, Prince William County, they're pretty helpful in giving us advice, especially if we think outside the box, to know that if it's a rainy day, then you might have 20 people inside. And again, I'm just amazed that staff and you guys think outside the box to put something like this together. Parking, have you guys thought of parking?
Well, there is a parking lot at the museum, but also across the street. There's plenty of ample parking also. So I don't know if that's because of the leases over there, but the property's for sale, so I don't think that those parking spaces are actually.
Oh, so what we would ask is, if anything, if there were to be overflow parking, that it occur here on our site, because I think we could safely assume if they're going in to get coffee, but they're also using our museum, we should take the brunt of the parking hardship. So we would work with them on that, but again, with the size of the parking lot over there, maybe we work with Haymarket Coffee, suggest the first couple times they park over here,
Yeah.
see how many customers they have. Later on in our discussion, we did have a point to talk about the farmer's market, and if we bring it back, does it exist in that parking lot to keep everything together? And then we have our users park over here, so I think that also is up for a discussion. But they do have over 10 spaces as it is now.
Chief, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at just the layout of it. Do you foresee any issues, vehicles coming in or out into that parking area?
No, because people are gonna come get their coffee and leave. I don't think it's gonna be a pile up.
Okay.
Councilman Morris, we're also very hopeful to see more of our residents walking.
Walk in.
Um,
That's what I was
That's one
Goodness,
of
I
our,
think
our
that's
big
good.
hopes on a nice weather weekend. You know, we want them to get out and see the museum, learn about their town and the history. And, you know, this just gives us the possibility of opening it, and they get to also enjoy a nice cup of coffee, buy their gifts or additional coffee for the week. So we're really hopeful we'll see more walkers as well.
I can tell you that we presently have 4 or 5 coffee shops in town. One more isn't gonna hurt it. I mean, you guys, man, I'm just amazed that you guys thought outside of the box, and thank you for looking at the town of Haymarket. And we'll be looking too, just for you to bring the roast in here on site, you know. So, thank you, sir.
So what are your thoughts about the deck? Any,
Haven't really thought about the deck.
yeah,
I'm just thinking about the inside right now.
oh, okay.
But I mean, tables could be, I mean, picnic tables could be put out there, anything for people to sit. I mean, depending on the weather, it's going to depend on whether or not people use it, so.
Somebody's,
If I might share. So I've kind of been, I guess, daydreaming about the museum since I started working here. But also Vice Mayor Tracy Lynn and I had a couple discussions of how we can better use that space. Do we open it, you know, for a farmer's market, but ultimately, do we have somebody who plays live music for a couple hours who, you know, in a way volunteers their time to do it? Is it somebody we find and bring in? Is it the students at School of Rock or CMC that have that opportunity? Do we try to utilize some kind of funding, whether it be an opportunity through the COVID CARES Act to provide additional seating for our restaurants out in the open where you can space out and get away from everybody else, but you can still enjoy your meals? So we ultimately, I think, kind of see it as a place to hang out, connect, and provide tables and chairs, maybe even some umbrellas, but we could also open it up for the possibility of having that live music, but really making it somewhere to go on your Saturday or Sunday morning.
I remember how we built the deck too, for a grant.
I remember.
Yeah, and then we have that nice ramp there. I mean, it's ready to be used and enjoyed by everybody. And I think a lot of people don't even realize it's tucked back behind there. So I think it's a big opportunity. And ultimately down the road, if we have the museum open, a farmer's market in the parking lot, tables and a musician, and then the caboose open, you have a whole little place. You could spend an hour and a half there on a Saturday morning and get fresh groceries, cup of coffee, listen to your son play music,
Yep.
and your daughter can read about the history.
I want to hear Chris play.
Yeah.
So,
Amazing how many, because I bring my grandbabies up there to the booth, and I opened it up and took them in one time. It's amazing how many adults, too, get up there and try looking inside, and that would be a wonderful opportunity to have it open, that folks could just stroll through there and take a look. Again, I think it's a great idea.
I think generating activity is really important.
Yeah.
It's a destination.
Right. I remember walking down or driving through town one day, and the farmer's market was here, and there were folks over by Eli's and the other place sitting around, and it just felt alive.
Yes.
So anything that can be done to help spur that, I think, would be wonderful. But for tonight, I mean, this is really conceptual at this point, right? And one of the things about that deck, it gets really hot. So some kind of shading, thinking about that down the road to make it more comfortable would be important. But, yeah, I mean, I'm okay. Bob?
Nothing?
You on?
He's muted, good.
I'm unmuted now. I'm good.
So I'll do it more formally this time. Mr. Mayor, I have a couple more points and I'll,
No, I heard it, it's not formal.
what's that?
I was waiting for formality.
Okay.
Since this is more or less just for discussion, I want to try to see how informal works.
My apologies, I should
To
Gooder.
To Councilman Morris's point, I wouldn't see these questions as barriers. I think we just need to make sure we're going to get questions from the community. So a lot of these questions are not meant to dash your dreams. It's just more understanding the details so that we can help advocate for what you're trying to do. I would like to look at the lease terms, if there's a standard format that we use for lease agreements, just to make sure you have everything that you need and the town has everything it needs. And I think we could probably defend it as a pilot program. Have you in there and have this public-private partnership, so I do support it. I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
I got like hours of stuff to say. He wants me to keep it really short.
Are you going to sell the masks too?
Can you
Yeah,
give
we'll
us
get it
2
to make
minutes
a
on
lot
the
more.
coffee? Tell us 2 minutes on the coffee?
That's his favorite part.
The beans.
Delicious.
He can't keep it to 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah, it's, all right. 120 seconds is going to be tough. So a long time ago in a place far, far away, I did a lot of work in Central America. And I worked for the U.S. Embassy, for the ATF attaché who ran Central and South America. We became very close friends. He retired, bought a coffee farm in El Salvador. Within 4 years, his coffee, he replanted 50,000 plants on his fields, and he is now listed in 3 associations in El Salvador as gourmet coffee. And actually, when we ship our coffee from El Salvador through Guatemala to the Gulf Coast for shipping, it's actually under armed guard because it's great coffee. We grow it at about 1,000 feet. We buy directly from him. We roast it, our coffee, in 3 different fashions. We have a light, a medium, and a bold. That's all the same bean. But there are different molecules at different heats and at different times that actually create different types of flavor. Because we're on a volcanic soil, we have low to no acidity in our coffee, so you don't have any bitterness. It's not a heavy hit. You can have a very deep, robust coffee without having something smacking the face on bitter. So we find that a lot of our clients now, our patrons, don't put cream or sugar in their coffee anymore. They like it straight. Our light coffee has a lot more flavors of the farm. The bananas, the mangoes, the cocoa, everything deposits in the soil. So all those flavors come out in our light coffee. And our logo is a treehouse that I actually sleep in when I go there. So it holds 1 bed and 1 chair. It's about 30 feet up in a mango tree on a 500-foot cliff that overlooks the Pacific Ocean. So it's absolute paradise over there. But that's how it pretty much all started. We really are looking at, we want to make a staple for Haymarket. Have people have a reason to come to Haymarket, and we want to help drive that traffic, not only inside of Haymarket with the residents, but then bring people outside to visit Haymarket because they want to see the Haymarket Coffee Company. So that's why we named it Haymarket Coffee.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that all the questions?
Yeah, no more drinking this coffee.
Who got free coffee?
Well, thank you guys for coming in.
We'll be in touch with some more questions
Appreciate it.
and
Thank
discussion.
Mhm.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so to continue our museum plan and display discussion, I passed around a handout, and Mr. Weir, I sent you one via email as well, so you could pull it up if you wanted. So we went through number 1 already, the potential rental space. We are also looking at, I have another handout here. Ms. Kim, if you could just pass that up. This is an example of one of the displays that our intern worked on. So this summer, we were really looking into collecting all of our historic material, really getting it put out there, telling our story. So we currently have an unpaid intern who is working very diligently to gather all the materials from the museum, use the Relic Library and other sources to compile these stories. He's working with, I believe it's a family member who does museum displays for a different museum, the Smithsonian. And this is the plan he came up with that we had already passed out. And then this is his display that he's also come up with. So a very intelligent young man who's just very driven to do this historic research for us. So we're working on that. We're also going to look at cleaning up our museum sign over there in front of the space, maybe getting some quotes on just getting, excuse me, getting a nice cleaned up look. It can even be the exact same sign. Maybe we just need to power wash it, but kind of taking care again of the outside. We're looking at different opportunities for advertising if Haymarket Coffee Company comes in. Excuse me. We certainly have that avenue as well as our quarterly newsletter, Facebook, website, and we can also talk later down the road if it makes sense to do any paid advertising. One thing, I'm not sure if everybody knows about it, Sorry. The last 2 years, we've done a historic walking tour. So this started with Prince William County. They worked with several of the towns in the county to really focus on the history and provide a walk for any county town resident who wanted to join. So I plan to take both those brochures, they were 2 different ones on 2 different parts of town, combine it into one, and then really have a self-guided walking tour for all of our residents to take, but also have it in the museum, a nice brochure that if anybody who comes in to, for whatever reason they're there, they can pick it up and they have a self-guided tour through town. The last one Marchant and I did, fully denoted by the 2 of us, I believe was 3.5 hours. It was a long one, but we had a great time. I'm hoping once we get more comfortable with everything that's going on, but also COVID restrictions kind of ease up some, that we could even start doing those again. We had a great turnout at the last few. And when you have somebody as dedicated as, Marchant to tell the story, and you can just get a lot of community support, so I'm hoping we can start that again. And also, this is something Tracy Lynn and I kind of discussed, but in our next quarterly newsletter, it looks like Prince William County is going to go virtual for the first quarter, so why not provide the kids a scavenger hunt to learn about their town, learn about the history and make it fun. So that's something that I'm going to work with Tracy Lynn on. We're going to come up with some fun spots that they can learn, our history, but maybe it brings them back here for a prize or something of that nature. So those are the first few. Any questions?
Just a
Sorry, I
comment.
just have a tickle in my throat.
Oh,
Yes.
you're right. So in the past, I think we've connected with Journey through Hallowed Ground.
Yes.
I'm imagining you're okay?
Okay.
All right, we'll wait.
Once
I
it
won't.
starts. Yeah, so in the past, we have connected with Journey Through Hollowed Ground for even everything right up to what kind of trees to put in, how can we tie in our town, I got some, with what their mission and goals are for everything on Route 15 from here all the way up into Gettysburg.
Good.
So we'll reconnect with that. I know we've lost touch in the last couple of years, but we'll reconnect for sure.
So, fun fact, Haymarket Baptist Church is built around a cemetery. There's a cemetery in the middle of the church that the church building surrounds.
No way.
Yeah.
So?
Take the tour and you'll find more out about it.
So one thing that I did just want to touch base on is the dollars and cents of it all, because I know budget is important with everybody. So some of the things that we had discussed is with Haymarket Coffee coming in, since they're just using the space at a part-term basis, it'd be something similar to how the arts was done in the museum. So it was like a daily fee. And we were looking and thinking about $50 a day. So if they did Saturday and Sunday, they would bring in about $100 a week, which would equate to about $5,200 a year. And then on top of that, then you've also got the ornaments, which Emily's going to get ready to discuss here, as well as the farmer's market, that between the 3 of them, it would bring in additional funds to help spend on other items to reinvest in the museum. So this is something that I think it's going to end up being a lot more cost neutral than prohibitive one way or the other. I do think we'll have to have some investment in the landscape up front, just to get it a little more presentable than it is right now, especially with the holly that's almost as tall as the steeple. I think that's something we really need to address. But I'm going to go ahead and let Emily go ahead and start discussing the ornaments here.
So, as some of you are aware, we started an ornament program back in 2019, and we actually use the company that designs the White House ornaments. So I'm going to pass the 2 around. The one in the white box is our town museum. It was our very first one in 2019, and it's kind of set in with a snowman and Santa Claus flying over at night. And then the second one is in the maroon box. It is St. Paul's Episcopal Church. So that was one of our oldest structures in town that had a history card that also went in the box, and it told the story of why the structure was historic and what it meant to our town. So I wanted to ask for council's support and approval to proceed with this program. We've had a lot of really great feedback on it. We have people who they want them to give away as, a token of where they're from, some people collect them, they want to, keep that memory of their town. I've even had somebody, I thought it was really special, they were stationed in Afghanistan this last Christmas, and they reached out that they wanted one to put on their tree over there. So, we've had a lot of great feedback with it. What we do is we pick out a structure. I can simply send them an idea that I've sketched out, and then I can send them Google map photos of the structure, and they come up with, they put our vision to what you see here. And so I do have a structure in mind, the oldest house in Haymarket, the McCormick House that did not burn in the Civil War. And so if this is a possibility, I would send over the artwork. They'll design it for free. We don't have to commit. We can see the design. We can work through the numbers. Last year we did by 500. This year I'd like to just go back to 250. And that way we also have extras from last year. And 2019 we did have to reorder. They sold out within 2 weeks. This is something that they mail it to us, and we do not have to start making payments until net 30. Usually what I do is as soon as I get a design picked out and I have approval, I start pre-orders. I start pre-selling them, and usually within that time frame of when they ship and when I started pre-sales, I get about 25%, if not more, spoken for. I think if we have that museum open on the weekends, that's a great opportunity that we can work with that person to help us facilitate those sales. It could even be something, we sell them here during our town hall hours, but when we have events, we sell them there as well. But also doing a package deal of 2019, 2019, and 2020. You get the whole historic feel. You have the historic cards of what each one means. So that's kind of the ornament discussion. Does anybody have any questions specifically about that one?
How much do you sell them for?
So thank you for asking that. I forgot to mention that. We sell each ornament for $20. We keep it priced fairly equal with the White House ornament. The very first year, it was around $9 to create the ornament. So per unit, it was $9. And we only sold them for, I think it was $15. So we made all of our money back to pay for the ornaments and then the shipping. Last year we did sell them at 20. Nobody batted an eye. They wanted them. It was a fair price. So I would expect to do them at 20 again. And the cost to make them is still right around that $10 mark.
Okay.
Depends on our colors, but it is right around $10.
And when would we have to have a decision
So
for ordering?
it's about right now with everything going on. They actually, they have the time. Not as many people are placing orders. Just because money's tight. So if we got a decision by September, we could have something turned around to us by late October and start selling as early as November.
Okay.
What I did find helped out a lot was being able to get the word out mid-October so people could buy them in time for gifts around the holiday season.
Yep.
We also work with some of our local businesses. So Details for the Home, she would sign out a stack of them, usually about 25 at a time, and she would collect cash or check only. And Barbara would take responsibility, check them out of our hands, and then we would each week just go collect what she's collected for us, and that worked out really well. I think we could do that with some other businesses to get it out there.
I think that's a great idea.
Emily, do you see any benefits in not putting the year?
So that was I put the year on there last year because that was the number one complaint I got the first year, is everybody said, I wish it had the year so that I knew what series I had. So with the second one, we decided, okay, the first one's always going to be generic. It's always our town museum. Let's start putting the year. And it did go over better. They also, on the first one, they wanted to see where it was from. They said this could be any building in anywhere USA, but now we have it tied back to this is the town of Haymarket. So like we had one gentleman come in, he bought 14 of them because that was his gift he gave his nieces and nephews. So he was sending them to California, and he's like, this is my hometown that I'm able to represent. So I think having the year and the place is significant.
Compared 2019 and 18, how many did we have left over? 'Cause
So
that's why I'm asking concerning the year.
I think there's a couple things that played into this, so I'll kind of explain. So the first year, we did a really big push. We only ordered 250. It was very limited. We were not going to order them again. We sold out within 2 weeks of having them in the building. Last year, we took a jump. We decided instead of 250, we were going to order 500. I think we sold around 300 of them. We also had enough requests for the first year that we placed a second order of the museum ones. So we do have, I would have to count again. We have some that are paid for that some people never picked up, but we probably have around 150 of last year's and around 50 to 75 of the first year. So what our plan was, if we do it again for a third year, that we would also sell the bundle deal and try to do it that way. Because I think we still have a lot of people out there who would buy them. They don't even know about them. We put them on Facebook. We put them on our newsletter, had them at events. But I know Tracy Lynn and I were talking about it, and I asked her, I said, oh, do you know about our town ornament? I'd love to do it.
I
And
had no idea.
yeah, so it's one of those, also talking with her, how can we get it out there better? So we're coming up with some of those ideas. So I see it,
Do you think that if we ordered 250 and we sell out, would we be able to make a reorder? And how long do you think it would take?
so I've talked with the company, and so what they say is that they keep all the designs on file. I can go back and order the first year now if that's the only one we want to do. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks lead time, depending on how busy they are, to get them to us. The minimum is 100 when you order them. When I bought the St. Paul's one, we paid for all of them with the ones we sold. So we were not out money.
Right.
We just would have had more profit if we sold more.
Right.
So that was how we tried to do it, was make a profit that went back to our museum, that we could fund our historic things we wanted to do. And so that's the intent of the ornament, just to be clear, is this would raise money for our museum, our displays, you know, whatever we can do to get people back in there.
My opinion is the issue that you're having, in my opinion, it's not whether we're doing this or not, it's how many you're ordering. That's just my opinion.
Well, so just to speak on that, one of the things that is a benefit is that, like Emily said, since they've already paid for themselves, these are now items that if we sell, it's just additional funds that go to the museum. And the more you get, the less each unit costs. So like Emily was saying, if you get 500, it may only be $9.40. Or if you get 250, it may be $10.50. So you're losing that extra. And if you got to get 2 shipments, then you got to pay for shipping twice. It's more advantageous, especially with people willing to get last year's ornament as well, since they can get 2 of them last year and this year. It's almost more advantageous to go for the 500, knowing we'll probably sell about 3. And then hopefully we'll be able to sell them in future years, just as, oh, these are the previous ones. Now, you're right, there may be, 10, 15, 25 that never end up getting sold because they're too old, but that's still extra revenue that goes to the museum, and it's at a higher profit margin than if we were to not have.
I'm thinking back to the White House ones that I have, and you're right, the year is important. Because I lined it up with who was in office.
And I think what you also
That's just how I think.
Yeah, and sometimes, if we continue this for 10 years, somebody might look at their collection and say, somehow I lost one, let me go see if I can buy one. It's also something that the plain museum ones, we can always, hand those out to, say we do a new resident package. That's something the vice mayor and I also discussed. Maybe you toss one of those in there. So.
Is there a retroactive to that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Right? Is there an expiration?
So one of the, I was just hoping from council I could get a little bit of directive on the structure. I'm very hopeful that we could do the McCormick House, as I think it is very important to our history, and it should have been the second ornament, we should have highlighted that.
So the McCormick House, that's the Cavazos?
That is
Okay.
correct.
So is your idea going forward to pick a different structure each year?
Yes.
I mean, from the historic register that we have in town?
Correct. So what I was aiming for is that each year, since we're raising money for our historic efforts, we pick a new historic structure or a historic event. I wanted to hit all of our structures, and hopefully they're still doing it in 15 years and they can do historic events that happen in the town. But I wanted to start and make sure we get all of our structures.
Emily, if I could, I was one that complained in 19 because of buy 'em every year. But the year is important. I agree with that. It's very important. I think under ordering is probably better than over ordering. So, I mean, if we did 250, I mean, just hypothetically, we did 250, they start selling like hotcakes right away. We could put another order in right away.
Yes, and the nice thing is the first order has to be in increments of 250. Any order after that, I can do 100.
Yeah.
So I would recommend we order 250 to start, and then if we need to order more, we go for that 100.
If they sell quickly like they did the first year, then, yeah, we could put in 4 to 6 weeks. But that's not bad if we, because, I mean, they start selling like pancakes, just put in another order.
And usually what I can kind of figure out is once I have the design, they send me a design that looks exactly like this in an image, so I can go ahead and post it just as soon as I have it, we have approval, and then that way I can take pre-sale. And if I see that I sold 100 in 2 weeks in, mid-September, I can easily say I need another 100.
So remind me again, I'm sorry, in regards to what we already have left over that you would be packaging, how many complete sets with a new order could we put together?
I can gather another count to have for Monday, but I believe we'd have 75 complete sets
Complete of all three?
2018, 19, and then whatever we get for 2020. What I would do at that point is if we want to sell each one for $20, I'd offer the bundle deal at $50 if that was okay with council, because then you're getting a $10 discount on your 3.
Like it a lot.
I'll see if it's possible to have a SketchUp done by Monday. They are kind of anxious for some work, so I'll reach out and see if they can give us an idea and present it to you guys as soon as possible.
Good.
The next item, I'll keep the next bit brief since this is just our first agenda item. Landscaping improvements. So I've supplied a picture here. We are looking at talking with our current landscaper for how do we better clean up this museum. The struggle is the ivy that's growing around the museum is growing into the museum. So we've had it come up in our floorboards. The holly trees to either side, they really start kind of overshadowing the museum. It's not getting the appearance it needs to have as our museum. The holly tree on the right, as you look at the structure, is encroaching on the first parking spot, as well as the walkway into the building from the parking lot. So I would recommend to remove the 2 and replace them with smaller ones that, again, will grow up, but they'll be smaller or slower growth. So we'll have quite a few years before we have to do anything with them. With yearly maintenance, they should stay well managed for quite some time. If you look closely, you can see the information sign there, and right behind it, unfortunately, that cherry tree has died. Very little bits of it have come out this year. So it's very sad. It's been here for a while. It's been in a lot of pictures. But again, I do have a proposal to have that removed, have the stump removed, to replace it with a new cherry tree. I would actually like to recommend for consideration a dogwood. A dogwood is our Virginia native tree. We don't have one here on site, and it also will save you $200. But it's our Virginia native. I think it's something we should consider. And then we also wanted to have them, they have provided us a proposal to remove all that ivy and dead plant material, overgrown plant material, and get the area cleaned up. So they have given us a quote for putting in some hydrangeas, some nice flowers that'll come back each year and just look very nice as we proceed. So I will have all of those quotes for you. I only went right now with our current landscape contractor. Does council wish to have additional quotes to compare?
I think just to have an idea, it would be
Okay,
useful just to have an idea.
It's a good comparison.
absolutely. So that's landscaping. Any
Sorry.
questions?
Was Bob saying?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
can everybody hear me?
Yes.
As a lifelong Virginian, believe me, I love the idea of dogwoods, and it's a beautiful tree. I just want everybody to be aware of the maintenance costs and death rate, for lack of a better term, for dogwoods, particularly when you're planting them new. If we've got somebody that's experienced with them, I'm all for the idea. I believe they're very beautiful trees, and they would look great there. But there is a downside to pursuing dogwoods in that particular location, and I just want everybody to be aware of that before we go down that road.
I'll reach out and talk with our contractor additionally about that, the maintenance. We do have a 1-year warranty on them planting it, but I can certainly research and get some more information about that.
Emily, I'll talk to you. There's another nursery, I won't divulge it here. They give more than a 1-year warranty on the
Okay.
trees. I just had 2 of them planted. After 1 year, to replace the tree they would replace, you would pay for the installation. But they give, it's multiple years for the life of the tree. So I'll get with you after this.
Okay, thank you. So I'll work on getting additional quotes and information for that. I also wanted to mention the relocation or potential relocation of the informational sign. So this was voted on by the ARB to have it on the town hall property here, so that as residents either came to our building, they could just walk over to the grass and see what they wanted to with the agendas, handouts, so forth and so on, or as they were walking on the street. If that is something that the council wants to discuss, that is something that we can have moved as well when we do some of the maintenance over on the museum property. And then number 5, discussion of picnic tables and seating areas. So I had started mentioning that with the deck, that we would really like to see some additional seating, whether we get Haymarket Coffee Company in or not. I think this is a very underutilized area, as well as our front green. Again, this kind of stemmed from a conversation I had with Vice Mayor about how do we get more people out and about, sitting around, enjoying our spaces. So we had discussed potentially adding in 2 picnic tables here on our front green, as well as table and chairs on the deck. It would really be a great opportunity. Businesses could package up your meals, say, hey, you know, we don't have outdoor seating. Feel free to walk down to Town Hall or the museum, and you can enjoy the seats and tables there. Of course, we provide trash cans. We do have somebody who empties those out weekly, if not bi-weekly. So that is something I know Chris was going to discuss maybe later, how we could fund that. And then lastly, just to keep it going, the farmers market. We've had a lot of interest this year to start it back up. I think we need to. I think we have the interest. We have the people who want to do it. Haymarket Coffee, they didn't speak much to it, but in talking with them before, they have connections with a lot of food market vendors, and they have a lot of people who would be interested in opening up on a Saturday and coming and being where they're at. And so this is something maybe we could talk about for a September or October timeframe, get a couple months in before winter hits, and then go and reopen in April or May and have a really fruitful farmers market.
Saw that.
Got the pun in there. But really do something to, you know, have our citizens have something to walk up to on a Saturday and enjoy. So I will provide more details of that, but I was envisioning we would try to keep it maybe on the museum side in that parking lot. We'd put signs up on our side for parking, and we would, they'd have the crosswalk there to utilize safe crossings. So we can talk about that more.
I love the way you think. Back to item 4, landscaping. Is that the telephone box at the front? If there's no way to remove it, is there any way to cover it with a sign or something?
One of those big rocks.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, think outside the box.
Let me see if we can maybe reach
Paint it
out.
green.
We can reach out and see if maybe, now that technology is changing, if there's a way to get it a smaller box, get something hidden.
We
I'll
could start there.
start there. And then if that's not a possibility, how we can beautify it.
Yeah, a notice
It
board.
could be a mural option. They do that in the cities. They allow people to come in and paint them fancy. But I'll see what I can do.
Because it's gonna look, I mean, it's gonna be hard for a vehicle to drive off the road, swerve, and then hit it. Yeah, that won't work.
And it's sad. Every time you go to take a nice picture of the museum,
Is that telephone?
You
Is
get
Is
that-
that telephone?
it is, I believe.
It is? Is it landlines?
Who needs those?
Probably a landline.
Bob, do you know?
So I had a couple of comments real quick. On the information sign, the landscaping, I think part of the confusion last time about the sign was we didn't have a formal application. So there's kind of a philosophy that local government doesn't necessarily have to follow its ordinances, but there's an exception when you do that, usually in emergency situations. So in this case, I was going to suggest that we recommend that an application be submitted, a certificate of appropriateness be submitted to the ARB, include like a rough landscaping plan.
I'll
and
look
then-
back, but I thought we had a full motion.
Well, just the application, to move
We
it
got
back.
an application.
Do we have a formal?
I
We
will-
talked about that
Yeah,
before?
that's a question for you. We did have an application that we did approve, but.
An application, or was
Yeah.
it a?
I
think it
think I
was.
wrote it all out in an
thought you
application
guys
with a motion. Ms. Cavazos, I believe, made the motion. And
Okay,
I
forgot
will,
about the application
I will
side.
look back and I'll have that answer for
Okay.
you. But I do believe it was fully done in application.
I think what had happened was we had approved of that location, then there was a decision made to move it
Oh, that's the one.
across the street.
Oh, that's
So
the
I thought
one.
part of that was.
Yeah, revert it to where it's
Revert
supposed
back, so, okay, thank you. If there was an application that was done, a landscaping plan, it would be helpful, I think. Can you check to see if the ARB still reviews
I will,
landscape plans?
and Hans, or whoever does it, will provide us with an actual visual before next Monday
Okay.
for discussion.
Thank you. If there's no objection to that, if they could prepare those materials, so. No objection. The picnic tables, was that something we needed to, we have a budget item for it already, or
Chris will talk about it a little more.
later on? Okay, we can do that
Yeah,
later on.
we'll talk about it later on.
Okay, thanks. That would be helpful for the farmer's market if someone has a place to sit and eat as well, so, on the patio. And then at some point, we wanted to rent that space elsewhere.
I can tell you what, when we invested in those heavy picnic tables at the park, those were good. It was a good investment. I did go a couple of weeks ago and spread them out a little bit more. But, but those things are great investments because no one is going to be tempted readily to move them.
Or still.
Because they're heavy.
We'll definitely hold
You remember them, right, Joe?
Yeah, it was Brian. Right, then Brian bought those for us. Well, I like this, I like what you're doing here and thinking about everything and being comprehensive in the approach and trying to make it friendly just for in town, but
Yeah.
outside town.
Yeah.
So keep doing what you're doing, keep going forward.
Yeah.
And as you bring it forward, I think, we'll give you a yay or a nay as far as we're concerned, but I like what I'm seeing, and it's about time we started using that facility. It really bothered me that we haven't been using that museum for a long time. We had the pop-ups with the artists and what have you, but it's not really fully, it's underutilized. And with the deck there, there's so much opportunity, so I like where we're headed here.
Okay, any more questions? We'll move on to the next agenda item, the bond release.
Okay. This bond release is for the 3 single-family homes on Fayette Street. They have been completed. They've submitted their as-built. Everything checks out for our Haymarket ordinances. Katie McDaniel has provided her review and approval. So I would recommend that this is approved at our meeting next month. The only condition I will state is that we do have several outstanding balances for the property. So the developer would have to pay these prior to us physically releasing the monies. But I do recommend that council goes ahead and approves it with that condition.
I wanted to make a real quick note. I actually sold that land to the developer, so if I need to abstain from discussion, then I will.
Okay, that's fine. When I was walking around for campaigning, we did notice that there was some type of irrigation issues. Did the town engineer mention anything about that?
Which portion of the property did you see that at? Was it the front up near the driveway along the road with the stormwater inlet?
Yes.
Exactly.
And do you know about what time you did that? Because we did have an issue, we did start addressing it, one of the pipes was crushed, and so they had to go back in and fix it. But I just would have to look at my emails if that was done prior or
That would
after.
be, I guess,
End
end
of
of
April.
April.
End of April? Okay, I will look back at that and I'll have an answer for you.
I must apologize, though. I wanted to walk it because I remembered when Alexandria's Keep came about for the release. This was 4 or 5 years ago. I think the council went ahead and approved it for the release, and there were some outstanding issues. So I do need to walk it, and I apologize. I should have done it
No
before
worries.
this meeting.
Just let me know if any questions
Yeah.
come up, or if
I
you want
will.
me to go over there and walk it with
Yeah.
you one day, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And Katie's always available to answer
I felt really
questions.
bad because there were a couple of residents in Alexandria's Keep that raised some topics, and I didn't do due diligence in walking it before. So,
Marshawn?
You said a portion of the landscape bond, so they're going to keep a portion left? on-
Yeah, so we hold the 10% for the 1 year,
Okay,
or
thank you.
2 years.
Bob? Your turn, Bob.
Simply from a procedural standpoint, one of the issues that I've had for quite some number of years is handling this sort of issue at a work session. If we're going to handle bond releases or anything that requires town action by the council, I personally would prefer that be actually handled at a meeting. I'm with Chris. I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to walk the property yet, and having looked at it while campaigning, I do have similar issues that he has. So if we can push this down the road to the September meeting, I mean, that would preferable be.
would that be an issue, Ms. Everly?
Mayor and council, just real quick, I put this on here strictly as a draft item so that you guys would be prepared for next week if you wanted to vote on it, but I have no problems if we need to push it additional time. I did not expect a motion or
I
any
would be in
vote
support.
tonight.
I would be in support of waiting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Tracy, have you seen any drainage issues on the ponding I see on our road is because of the building here on the corner, because they have stuff in the VDOT right of way and it doesn't drain.
Right.
I was actually going to have my guys come in with a grade awl and dig it up and make it proper. But I've not seen any issues beyond Mr., is it Garza or whatever? Is that-
Garcia.
You're talking about Fayette? No, we're talking about right here by my house.
The three right directly across from me.
So the only drainage issues I've seen has been down at the corner, and that's because there's stuff in the VDOT right away that shouldn't be there. But I've not, and I've watched that. In fact, I stopped Dominique from working twice when I wore my hat with the VDOT here in charge of Prince William because of things they were not doing. So, but have you seen any drainage issues for the three houses?
Just from walking, there just seemed to be pooling right there in the front.
Okay, and it's got to have the proper fall. So, yeah, I agree with everyone else. I'll walk it and look at it myself too. And if, ultimately, if we need to have VDOT come in and shoot the grade to make sure that it's got the proper flow, I can make that happen.
And also, go ahead.
No,
I was just going to suggest, have we spoken with the homeowners too? Because to your point and Bob's about Alexander's Keep, they would know firsthand what kind of problems they're having. So,
well, this isn't Alexander's Keep.
no,
This
I know
is-
that.
no, no,
It's
I know.
right over here at Fayette.
Lesson
And
learned.
when we were out walking around, We met a couple of families, I think, and they were pointing out that they were having some real problems in the front yard, the drainage and what have you. So,
So then, where we sit now, is this something that you would like to continue to have on next week, or is this something we're going to push to August's
Another month?
work session?
I think.
Put it off.
Some of the stuff
We
that we're
address,
dealing with right now that's more
Okay.
urgent.
No, that's what I just want to make sure, because this is for discussion today, so then any item that we don't think is ready for Monday, we can just push it to the next, we can just push it to the next work session and then try
Yeah.
and get that,
I would
September
recommend that
meeting.
if the rest of the council
Okay.
can agree.
We need to
address
give,
at the work session, see if we are ready for voting it on the September meeting.
And in the meantime, as we have storms and stuff, as long as I'm here, I'll work with Chief, maybe the officer on duty, if it happens at night, we can try to get some good photos of drainage, and I'll reach out to the families as well.
and we need to give the builder time for any punch list items that we find. So I agree. I think we would table it till September.
Thank you. Oh, and
Confusing?
my last item is the railroad resolution. I provided a draft with the town seal up at
Really
the
good.
top. I did add 3 items here, further down. Whereas the project will reduce congestion, minimize risk for at-grade collisions, and improve safety on Route 15 for vehicular and pedestrian traffic and train operators. And whereas the overpass will improve the risk index calculation for the town of Haymarket's quiet zone implementation plan by removing the highway rail grade crossing. And whereas the project will in turn benefit Norfolk Southern, the town of Haymarket, and Prince William County in providing better level of service to all users along Route 15. If there's any additional suggestions or edits or additions, please let me know.
yeah, just one minor thing.
Yes.
And Bob, I think you might have been around for this when, I think this is really the county's resolution for the quiet zone, but we're managing it, so we both benefit, the county and the town. Because
So-
Thoroughfare Road, I believe, is in that.
And
So,
the risk index one, add the county in as well?
yeah, please.
Okay.
I'm good with it. I support it.
If you think of anything else, let me know. There you go. That is all I have.
Okay, town manager with the priority list.
Yes, so the idea behind the priority list is basically to just have you guys review some of the task lists. I do apologize, I meant to take out the ARB Planning Commission appointments. That was something that we've already completed, but I was utilizing the task list that I send you guys on a weekly basis with status updates. One thing that this will benefit the staff as well as myself is that based on you all's input, I'll know what is more important and what second tier, third tier items, and this way it'll help me manage staff. For example, if Emily's got 3 things that are very important on her plate, then maybe I might need to have Ms. Kim or Roberto help out with quarterly newsletters or something like that, then we're going to have to do that. This is just to allow me to manage staff and manage expectations for you guys so we can try and get everything done. So this really will help me get a starting point, because what I like to do is I'm going to take the average scores, and based on that, that's where I'll provide the ranks of tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we'll bring that to the August 3rd meeting, and this way I'll have something worked up, so I think we'll have a little bit better notion of kind of what everybody's thinking, and then we can have the discussion from there. Yes, sir.
One quick question. I have down as number 1 for the ARB PC appointments, because the Planning Commission, we've done all the appointments, correct? But we still have ARB to go?
Everything is full. That one,
Oh, everything is full?
yes, everything
Okay.
is full, done, notified, emails are provided, except for 2 individuals that missed the meeting. So yeah, that one, if you guys want to, you're more than welcome to cross that out, because that's already been completed, and we're working with them. That was an accident, that I didn't delete that one. But everything else, if you can give me some input, and then that'll just help move forward. So we'll know where everybody stands. And I'll have that available for the agenda that should come out tomorrow or Wednesday. So as long as you can get this to me before you guys leave today, I'd appreciate it so I can calculate everything. It'd be helpful.
How about the quarterly newsletter item? Do we want to consider that OBE, or do you want that as an item?
I mean, that's something that I think everybody is still okay with sending out the quarterly newsletter.
Okay, I didn't know if we just wanted to consider that OBE, since we are, in the process of getting that done.
That's fine. While it's just coming up real quick, if everybody could dress for a picture on August 3rd for our newsletter, that would be great.
Yeah,
Town
next
council
Monday,
Meeting next Monday?
next Monday.
Dressed, aren't we? Chris? Yeah. Make sure you wear a dress.
I have
Are we,
I have a couple.
Yeah, so just, Mayor, to speak to the quarterly newsletter, the other thing that, where this is helpful is I understand we're currently operating this way, but where I see this happening as well is if we get to a crossroads where, for example, we've got comprehensive plan stuff we need to work on, quarterly newsletters, or something like updating the website, there's going to be stuff that we're not going to be able to have everything done at the same time. So there's going to have to be some things that rise up that get done first and have that higher priority. So even though, yes, the quarterly newsletter is important and we really want to get it out, that's something where if we don't get it out on the 1st and we get it out on the 5th because we were taking care of a tier 1 or tier 2 item, that's where it would be helpful. So I understand, yes, these are certain things that we're already operating, but that's what I'm saying, where it just helps me with operation as to if we need to push something back, push a tier 3 item a little bit, a couple days back so we can hit a tier 1 or tier 2, then you all understand why that decision was made. That's kind of what my thinking behind it. So I understand what you were saying, but that's the only reason why I kind of kept things like that on there, is just for that information for me
Okay.
moving forward.
Well, I gave it a number, so
Okay.
we're good now.
Thank you.
Question?
yeah, a couple of questions real quick. So I was late to the party because I was not here last month. A couple of follow-up questions. We have two points about the Jefferson turn lane and sidewalk, and also the town parking lot improvements.
So are you looking at the task list, or are you looking at the,
He's listing at.
you're looking at the task list, not the priority list?
Oh, well, in the priorities, I just had a question about, those were part of the site plan. Were we talking about doing this independent of the site plan?
Phase it, because just the sheer volume and price of the site plan itself.
Okay.
If we can start, there's certain processes in place I can discuss with you offline.
Well, that's fine.
I've discussed it with some of the finance liaisons and mayor. So can have those conversations and bring it to speed.
Because we spent the money to go through that site plan process. It'd be hopeful not to have to abandon that.
Well, correct.
Okay.
So it would just be, instead of utilizing the whole thing at one time, it'd be a phase.
Okay, cool.
But, yeah, we can discuss that.
You've already discussed it with the finance committee, that's 2 members, and the mayor, and now you're gonna discuss it with Marshawn, that's 4 out of 6. I mean, include the rest of us.
So,
Well, we don't need to. I just.
so the only
What I'm
plan,
saying is that you're gonna go for 4 members on it. I mean, do you feel left out? Because I feel left out.
so I'll go ahead and I can speak to the turn lane. What we were looking at doing is, because of the fact that the town is going to be donating land, and it's going to be about the same exact land that the hotel just donated to the town of Haymarket, which was to the price tag of about $160,000. Then if you take those two, plus the fact that we already had engineering done for our site plan, you've got that plus the land value of about $320,000 for the 2 turn lanes, and then I've also got the engineer that's going to do a calculation to determine the increase of capacity at the intersection, because as of right now, you already have 15 and 55 at the Divergent Diamond that's already at capacity or near capacity during peak hours. So that's something that I think we could use a phase system by utilizing the site plan we already have and trying to reach out to Prince William County Transportation, Representative Danica Rome, and see if we can try and get some funding from the state or county to help us with this, because it's going to be a much cheaper option than putting more money into the Divergent Diamond, and it would help increase the capacity. For example, you have a lot of people that come from Heathcote in the neighborhoods back, the Potomac, Piedmont. the Piedmont neighborhood, they come straight down to go to Wegmans. So there's certain people that they use this as a thoroughfare, where if we increase that turn lane and increase that capacity, I think we have a case to try and get state and county dollars to assist us, and that's something that we could actually manage and get taken care of sooner rather than later if we do a tiered approach, instead of us spending all the money that we set aside for the town hall upgrades. So that's where I think if we did it that way, it may be advantageous. Now, it might not, but I think if we do it in a phase system, it would be helpful.
Big expense there, and it's going to probably be the most expensive portion of this, utility relocation. That is the most expensive thing we're going to hit,
Yeah.
and it's astronomical.
Does it trigger a stormwater?
Well,
Everything.
yeah, and that's why I think
Any utility in it especially if it's electrical, that is high dollar.
and that's
But I mean, we need to pursue it to find out, and then pursue, grants. I'm glad you brought up Danica Rome, because Danica has called me twice and said she'd love to hear what we need her help in.
And that's my
So-
thinking too, is that, like you said, relocating utilities and things like that, maybe we're still gonna have to pay a portion or assist in some way, but my thinking is, if we can already say, well, we have donated $320,000 in land value, we've already done X number of $1,000 in the engineering cost, that counts as our portion, and then if we only have to pay, let's say, 33% instead of the full 100%, we can just get it done that much sooner. So that's the plan that we're trying to work for.
Well, it's distinction basing it off that plan. We already have engineering plans, so
Yes.
we wouldn't have to spend the money twice.
Yeah, no, you're
I guess my
100%
point
right.
would be mobilization, that's a big cost too, is that if the hotel's building the turn lane or whoever's,
All they did was donate the land. We're gonna have to spend
so
the
we
money
would want to do all that at once. It's unfortunate we couldn't have brought the trail down and turn lane when we did the Connolly money project up here, but I think that would be key, is we want to try to be efficient with it. So thanks for distinguishing that. I just wanted to make sure we were still basing off the old plans.
Thank you.
The other,
Be like part of the team.
yeah. The other question I had, did we have wayfinding at some point on here? I saw that somewhere. Was it in the budget? Okay. It is on here?
I thought I saw it.
It needs to be added back on one, Marshawn.
Okay. We had wayfinding. If the council would indulge me, a couple other things I wanted to see if we could add is, I know we updated our land use application requirements for submission, but I wanted to have that updated, have our process and procedures updated along with our fee schedule. Our fee schedule is pretty outdated. So, and we talked about this before, about updating all our checklists. And part of the application that's coming through, the QBE application coming through right now, is some questions about, or some ambiguities about what's required. So tightening that up, and that can help us with consistency along it. So I called it land use process and procedures and fee schedule, if we wanted to add that as a priority, or add that as a task. Unless that's covered under.
Well, that's what, my assumption was the policies and procedures. That's kind of a full incorporation thing, because there's just so many that we need to address. Instead of just trying to individually articulate every single item that needs to be addressed
Okay.
on that first page. That's where I was, but I was
Okay.
right with you with the checklist, the fee schedules, those items is what I was kind of incorporating. But
Okay.
if you think it needs to be broken out separate from just the other policies and procedures,
No, if it's under the umbrella across the board. So
Yeah,
we adopted the policies last month, I guess, across the board.
some of them.
And now we're coming back and sort of.
Yeah, exactly. So the ones that absolutely needed immediate action
Okay.
were taken care of. And then now we've got time to go back and address some of the other ones.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had is, we talk about the business roundtables, and then there's another economic one, but did we want to, I had talked about an election trying to rebrand. Do we want to allocate monies, and I'm not sure how to verbiage to use it, but do we want to hire or look at RFPs to somehow help with the rebranding, or piggyback on the Gainesville Business Association, something that helps us market the
So-
town?
I think it would be more advantageous to have the business roundtable and get an idea from the businesses what
Okay.
necessarily they think would be best, and that
Okay.
way we get a little bit of buy-in from the businesses as well.
So that would host that under that one, okay.
Well, that is something that I think would be advantageous, is to hear from them prior to really taking any action, just independent, because they're going to be the ones that are going to really help us brand and, bring people in from the regional stuff. So I think it'd be nice to have their input prior to
Well,
moving forward.
on the Facebook, the Marias came up, it had Prince William County, I can't remember if it was Visit Prince William County or what, but it had all these unique sites, and it listed Haymarket. And that's certainly would be the goal, is that we get tied into a lot of those sorts of things. But if that's under the roundtable, then that's fine.
And that's something that prior to COVID happening, I actually had reached out with Prince William County Tourism to try and work on some items. But unfortunately, that ended up falling through with COVID. Other things took precedent. But hopefully, I think with Emily and Vice Mayor working with the Business Roundtable, I've got the contacts with the Prince William County Tourism. So with those roundtables, we can easily set something up to have them willing to come out here and help us and get on their calendar and on their websites and stuff. So I think that's a pretty easy possibility.
Okay. And then, anything else with regards to the police department?
So this one is right now specifically for myself and my
Okay.
admin staff.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Chief, but if you guys wanted something like that.
I don't know if there's any council priorities on the police department. We kind of covered a lot of our buildings, a lot of structures, or anything else we wanted to,
I have other stuff, but not
for this? Okay. Great. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
I have a couple. Just, I just want to say that this is a great idea. It's a good start to try to corral the cats and to help manage expectations, because we all have competing priorities, right? And we want them all done at the same time, but that's impossible. So I think it's a good start. A couple of things I thought about was kind of aligning this, and Bob, jump in if you want to talk about this stuff. More on the strategy side, aligning this with the strategic initiatives that you sent to us that was previously adopted. I think we need to really take a look at that and either reaffirm or amend or come up with some other ideas. Certainly, it should be somewhat aligned with what we're looking to do here over the next.
By topic? By
Yeah,
categories? Okay.
exactly. So in that regard, it is a helpful tool and an interesting and a good exercise to do that. A couple of things, just when we've done surveys with the folks in town, and I don't know, Bob, if this is in the comprehensive plan, one of the big priorities was the playground, was the park. And I think so far, what I've seen about the playground is it's been really successful, really, really successful. So one of the things I'd like to think about doing is installing some kind of a shading system for the kids, right? So it's a lot more fun rather than being out there in the blazing heat. I saw Steve there with his granddaughter, and I had my grandkids there, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, they really loved it, but that was in the fall, or in the spring, actually, when it was cooler.
Summer, it's hot.
It's brutal up there, but people still use it, and it's great to see folks using, having picnics and what have you in the shade there, and of course, other events. So in my view, that's really an important aspect that we really need to look at is the park and the playground.
I will work on, there's some different canopy systems that you can get, which basically it's a big canopy, so water can get through it, but it's very good at shade and stuff like
That's
that.
the cells. Yeah, the cell look, that's,
Yeah, I'll look
that's
into
popular, and I'm actually about going to do it on my back deck. But it definitely blocks the sun, Joe, and you were right. We definitely need it as much as that park's used.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just one idea. Bob, do you have something you want to say?
Mr. Mayor, I mean, get one earphone out of my ear so I can actually hear myself talk. To dovetail on what Joe said, I think we need to revise where we're going strategically, at least in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think the park is a perfect example. And I think we're going to get into this a little bit when we start talking about the budget here shortly. In terms of, what are our priorities as opposed to what are the priorities been for the past couple of years. One of the things that a lot of us have heard over and over again from the residents is the usage of the park space, whether it's the playground or the quite frankly, the underuse of the heavy picnic tables that nobody could move, or the underuse of the existing building that's on the property. I think we need to look at that both in terms of if and how we're going to develop the property and when we actually get around to putting in the streetscape in front of it. And I think that's sort of the elephant in the room. Is the park usable to its fullest capacity in its current state without that sidewalk in front of it? How much does putting the streetscape in front of it increase the usage of the park? And for my 2 cents and my 1/6 vote, I think that's got to be one of the highest priorities we've got, is finishing that streetscape, putting something in front of that park to make the park more accessible and more usable to the average resident. And I'll get off my soapbox now. Now's not the time, but I think when we start talking about the budget here in a little bit, you'll see my flavor to it in terms of the original talking points that I put in there. And believe me, those are just, a starting point for us to consider. But I think we have to have, we need to move the football somewhere down the road. I guess we need to make a commitment as early as September, if not October or November. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have some plans as well that I was planning on discussing that when we get to budget discussion. Anything else in regards to the priority list?
I mean, I don't know how difficult this is, but when you go back to the IT quotes and that kind of stuff, how difficult would it be to have an email address that somebody could click on for the entire council? Is that difficult to do? Because, I mean, it's so much easier to communicate with everybody rather than set up a group and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you can do that internally. We do have groups, don't we?
Well, I'm talking about for residents.
Yeah, residents, we don't have anything for residents.
So, in other words, like the county has, you click on the BOCS and it goes to every member of the board. So can we do the same thing here in town to help improve communication? Because some folks are, they're not that great with technology and what have
So
you.
then, what you're asking for is if they go to town hall, like town council, and they click on somebody to send an email, it would go to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there are general emails that people want to share with the entire council.
So we can set that up through our website. So what I can do is I can create a contact us format, and so I can put every single council member, mayor, and if you want the town manager in there, their emails, so that when they send that specific email with that form, it goes to all of you. Right now, how it's set up is any contact us from the website comes to my email, and then I forward it to its appropriate department. 9 out of 10 times it is something zoning or do I live in the town. The other 10% is usually actually the chief. The other thing we can do on our website is we can set up email bang lists so that any of the notifications tab, you can actually encourage all your neighbors who want more info. They go in there, they type in their email, they click everything they want info on, and then what I can do is we just coordinate each week, bi-weekly, monthly, what have you. I go send an email with an update to that email list, giving them, whatever information is needed. So we have a lot of tools in that capacity. I'm more than happy to sit down and just talk website one night with everybody. And we have a lot of really great tools. Vice Mayor and I have been talking about it, and we have a lot of ideas. Just haven't had time yet to get there, but we will. But we have really cool tools like that to include videos. We were talking about doing a video, here's citizens, here's how you apply for this or sign up for this via video. So we have a lot of stuff to do.
Because I'm one of those technically challenged people.
We're going to have a Teach Tracy Lane
Yeah.
video series.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course, we want to encourage better and more frequent communication. And make it easy for folks. Yeah. So thank you. That's it for me. You want this now?
Okay. Anybody else on this topic? Okay, we'll move on to the meeting schedule update.
All right, so the meeting schedule update, the only thing that really changed with the policies and procedures was that the last Monday of the month is now the work session. And since we adopt the schedule per calendar year, that's why I only went to the end of 2020. And then the only thing that I did want to bring up is that the one in December is scheduled for the 28th which is right there between Christmas and New Year's. So I think that if you guys wanted to choose another date, that would probably be one that you'd want to look at changing. But other than that, I will have a resolution to, I'm pretty sure it's going to need to be a resolution, but to update the meeting schedule so that we can advertise for the rest of the year.
I don't think we need a resolution, just a directive. Create
Okay,
the
then we can
schedule
just
with
do
a
that. That's true, because
public announcements,
so if-
right? I
if we
mean,
do-
our schedule's a public announcement for it,
So the only difference is if you do a resolution, then you are able to act if necessary at the work sessions. If you don't want to do a resolution and you want to ensure that it is only discussion items only, then you're correct. We can just do it as a directive. So if you'd like to do a directive, then we can move forward, and this won't need to be on the agenda next week.
Yeah, I don't think we need
Personally,
to,
I think it's
yeah,
good not being
not
able
to act, yeah.
on that night.
Okay, and is
I'm
everybody
right there
okay
with
with the
you.
dates? So I've got August 31st, September 28th, October 26th, November 30th, and December 28th.
Yeah, we'll keep that for now. We can readdress the December 28th a little bit down the road. We only need to change that a week before, right? If we consider that a public
I
notice.
prefer 2 weeks so that we
2
don't get
weeks.
an agenda out that Monday before, and then we don't have a meeting. But
Okay.
I think it's best, Mr. Mayor, I think it's best to wait, especially to see the availability of council members.
Yeah,
I'm sure by the 1st of December, we will have an idea that I won't be, I mean, that some members won't be.
all right. So then, basically with no objection, then we will start advertising the work sessions on the dates included in here. Okay. So the next one is the CARES Act, or Corona Relief Fund allocations. So the big thing that we need, Roberto and I need today, is basically to break down how council wants to move forward. One thing to remember, I sent you guys the email. There's 3 things that dictate how the money can be spent. So I'll just go over those real quick for a quick reminder, and then I just wanted to provide an additional update. So one is that they are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the corona disease 2019, COVID-19. The second criteria is that it was not accounted for in the budget most recently approved as of March 27th, 2020, the date enacted of the CARES Act for the state or government. And then the third is that the funds, it was incurred during the period of March 1st, 2020 and ends December 30th, 2020. So that means that that is the time frame that we have to spend the money, and we can't go outside of it. So that really does handcuff you to what it can be spent on. It's not a free rein. And then the last item that I just want to make you all aware of is that I know a lot of other places have used this to benefit businesses. However, since this is a Dillon Rule state, we, the town of Haymarket, cannot give money to for-profit businesses that do not provide us with a service or product. So because of that, if we wanted to try and give money to them through a grant or something similar, we would be required to get a third party, whether that is a business organization, a community group, something like that. And the only thing that I would assume there is that you're probably going to have to pay some type of fee, 5%, 10%, something like that, to have the money go from one to the other. So because of that, my recommendation would try to be provide options that benefit the bulk of the businesses. So something similar to like a business commercial campaign, radio, TV, something like that, along the lines of Visit Haymarket, where we have space to shop and, the hometown feel, something along those lines, versus trying to do business grants, because unfortunately we do not have an in-town merchant group or anything like that. And really, it's up for discussion. I'm ready to answer any questions you guys have.
let me speak real quick first, Bob. I think the discussion that we were having earlier today about maybe bringing on a consultant in which the COVID money would supplement their costs would be the best way to even start to work this discussion on what percentage goes where, how it gets done. get somebody with a little bit of knowledge and who could work this solely and get paid for by the COVID dollars. So, we end up taking a 10% hit for their salary, so to speak, or their 1099 consultant, and then we work it out, let them work it out.
So I'll just speak to that. So what the mayor was discussing is one recommendation that I do think would be advantageous for the town is because there's so many resources out there. If you just type in CARES Act or Corona relief or assistance, you're going to see child care, rent and mortgage relief, stuff from the state, stuff from the county, stuff from the federal government, SBA loans, things like that. I do think that it would be advantageous to try and get somebody in here, 1099 worker, just part-time, couple hours a week, to be able to help residents, business owners with those applications, whether it's state applications.
And direct us on where we should be allocating the money.
Correct. Somebody that would be willing and able to help us in there as well. I think that would go a very long way. And that's something that Roberto and I were discussing. If you bring somebody in for 25 hours a week at $20 an hour, that's about $11,000. So you would still have $135,000 to spend on the aid. So I just think that's something that I've heard multiple times. Can businesses get help from the county? Yes, they can. They can get it from the state. They can get the small business loans. Same thing with residents. They qualify because they're members of the county. So I just think those are services that need to be out there, and if we have somebody on staff that's able to answer those questions on a regular basis, I think that would go a lot farther than not having that resource available.
Okay, Bob, I'll give you the floor first.
I'm the last person that wants to reinvent the wheel here, but it occurs to me, in having read what the county has done, especially with respect to micro entity loans and that sort of thing, where they're making use of COVID relief for small businesses, which, quite frankly, are the predominant type that we have in town. Have we approached, or could we approach, the economic development team in Prince William County and mirror our efforts based on theirs? Because it was my understanding, and I may be wrong here, but that they were proctoring some sort of micro grant based on their SBA description and whether or not they fell into a particular category of small business, and they've got a list of like 300 different descriptions of what constitutes a small business and what doesn't. But if the county has already done that, my understanding is the city of Manassas has done a similar program. Could we not essentially mirror their efforts, take their language, and do it the same way, or am I missing something?
The only thing that I would know is normally economic development, while they do act as an arm of the government, normally it's not actually the government. It's normally like a nonprofit group that's willing and able to help. So
in the case of the county's economic development team, they are paid staff, and the programs that they're running through the economic development department are funded by the county directly. They are not a third party. They are not a private institution. So, and the same thing goes with the city of Manassas. They have their own in-house economic development team. So if they're able to do this, my personal feelings about the county attorney's office aside, if they have found a way to do this directly, with direct aid specifically to the small businesses, we'll talk about the residents in a minute, but if they're able to do that directly, shouldn't we be in the same boat as they are, or in the same circumstance, to where we can cut direct aid? I understand we're a Dillon Rule state, but if the county is given that authority and the city of Manassas is, I can't imagine that we're not under the same rules that they are. And my admittedly brief reading of the Treasury guidance on this seems to indicate the same thing as well. So long as you follow the SBA guidelines and the recipients of whatever grants you want to give them, for lack of a better term, so long as there's an application process in place and you make them jump through the administrative hoops, it was my understanding that we should be able to grant them direct aid based on that COVID relief money, so long as we appropriate and allocate that money for that. Like I say, I don't know that we need to go through the process of hiring a whole bunch of consultants to do this. My theory or my suggestion would be to pick up the phone in County and in Manassas, find out how they did it, and if we have the opportunity to accord ourselves of
No, we just lost you.
the money where we're giving it directly to them, i.e. the small businesses, than it is paying consultants to figure out how otherwise to do it.
Can I ask a question, follow up on that? So the EDA, does the EDA collect data from businesses in town? Do they work with the associations like the HGBA, the Chamber of Commerce, and what have you? Bob or anybody? I mean,
No idea.
yeah, would you know? I mean, because that would seem, I mean, my question is, so what businesses in town really need this? Do we know? I mean, have we gotten some feedback? I mean,
Some people took advantage of the delayed business license, but to my knowledge,
do we know about the PPP? Any businesses? No.
no.
Is there some way that we can survey the businesses rather quickly, just to get a sense of the needs?
We did provide a Survey Monkey to kind of see how everything was going at the beginning of COVID and if they closed and things like that. We weren't able to utilize much of that data. What I did do is use a lot of those emails, though, to help get out the SBA loans and information on it. And I know that at least one business or two businesses were able to obtain the SBA loans through those emails. But I'll be more than happy to send a follow-up Survey Monkey, see if we can get some more recipients.
Yeah, kind of getting this.
Or maybe, could we find out from Prince William if, how many businesses from the town of Haymarket has applied for the SBA loans? Instead of calling the businesses.
Well, who collects that data?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who does it? Who do they get the loan from?
There's multiple sources at this point in time, because SBA loan is funded differently than Prince William County grants, the small business grants. Councilman Weir, did you know which ones are funded with?
Maybe, maybe not, but probably the best thing to do would be to reach out to them and have that discussion and see, maybe they have some information we're not aware of. And this is strictly on the business side.
Just on the business side, but I understand what Bob is saying in the fact that before we go out and try to hire someone who would give us advice on it, could we tap into the resources of the county first, or which other organization? It can't be that many, to find out how many businesses have applied. We don't want to get their personal information. We just want to know how many from the town of Haymarket has applied. And then is it worth it for us to go forward in even bringing someone on to give us advice in offering a loan? If it's 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses, I don't know if it's even worth us going. But then in addition to what the mayor said, that same person could advise us on what other areas could we use the funds.
Yeah,
and I think that's why it's two different questions. It's not just, Prince William County or the organization giving us the relevant information. It is also advising us how to use it, because have we used portions of it already?
No.
No. And that's what I'd be doing, is looking for advice and administration of it, giving them the responsibility to administer all the stuff. Bob, you had some questions?
No, I mean, Chris and Joe pretty much covered it. The issue that I've got is this: if we're going to give out some sort of loan or grant, and personally I believe grant is probably a better option just because there's less paperwork involved. In reading the guidance from the Treasury Department on how those funds have to be dispersed, they have to meet a variety of small business criteria, and they have to fall inside of a certain category, and the town, in order to cut those grants or the loans, quote unquote, would have to have some sort of application process whereby they delineate what type of business they are, and then there's a there's a sheet of identifiers that the SBA uses to determine, what classification they fall under. And we would have to put that into place in the application process. And we don't have unlimited time, obviously, because we have to have the stuff done by the end of December. But I suspect that we have enough time to put a program into place whereby we could disperse these use it or lose it funds prior to the end of December and get it to the businesses that are particularly hurting. If there are any, and if there are any that are willing to go through the process. My suspicion is there are some, and I think you're going to want to look more towards the personal services businesses that have been most impacted by COVID. For instance, hairdressers, barber shops, that sort of thing. And in listening to the presentation of the county the other day, perhaps even some small medical offices, which have been sort of sidelined by the emphasis on COVID and the de-emphasis on, what do you call it, not extraneous, you know where I'm going, elective surgeries and elective medical procedures. And from what I'm understanding, believe it or not, the medical industry is one of the ones that's most hurting in the region. Now, do they qualify as an SBA type business? I don't know. But that will be part of the application process. And putting that program together, at least in my mind, if the county and the city have already done that, it should be fairly easy to, for lack of a better term, plagiarize what they've done and just put the program in place. I'm going to assume that they've properly vetted how they're doing it, and as long as we mirror that, I think we'll be okay. But then we have to also consider, what are the funds that we have available? Will it make a real difference? How many people are going to apply? And then how much are we going to set aside for actual individual homeowners or renters? And that's the other side of the equation, which I think we need to talk about next.
So yeah, basically today what would be helpful in you guys' discussion is a breakdown of kind of how you would expect to divvy it up. If you think, 50% to businesses, 50% to residents, 70-30, something like that. Similar to what Emily was talking about, I did just want to mention one other thing is something that I think her and Vice Mayor discussed that I think we would be able to use these funds for. It would be minute, but I think it'd be a very long, something we could use for a while, is those picnic tables. Because I think if we were to set the picnic tables here in the grass area in front of Town Hall, we've got several restaurants right in this general vicinity that don't have a lot of sit-down space. So like she said, have it in front of Town Hall, and then once COVID starts dying down, then we could transfer them to the park to have additional picnic space, as well as 1 or 2 tables at the museum. And this way it would offer some additional outdoor seating for those restaurants or small businesses that basically you pick it up and you go. There's only a couple seats, so this way they could just mention it, and this way we'd be able to get those picnic tables for that purpose.
Question. Cool question I had. So do we even know if a person exists, this consultant that we talked about? Do we know that it's a niche market that's already started, or where do we go?
I do not. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. Doing all these programs and everything with the 4 of us, on top of everything else on the priority list, I don't know if we're going to be able to get everything done. So I think it's going to be advantageous, even if it's not an expert, somebody in here to give us additional help to help specifically facilitate this, because this is something that if we got them and their only job was to come in here and assist with the county, state, federal, all the assets available, that's something that would help. And it's only a small portion of what the total amount is. And I just think that's a good investment, because, trying to facilitate these large programs on top of everything else we're doing.
And we're not incurring an expense.
No, because this would be covered over the COVID expense, because this position would be specific to COVID, and that's all they would be working on, would be COVID and helping those individuals.
The challenge would be is time is of the essence, and we can't spend 3 months trying to find a consultant.
Yeah.
So to plagiarize to his point, Buddy Reiser up at Loudoun County, they received funds and had a lottery that how they distributed funds. In terms of nonprofits, we have a lot of nonprofits in the town already. Full disclosure, I'm a member of Haymarket Church upstairs. They've not been able to congregate or meet, so their tithing's down, but they're putting a lot of money back into the community. I like the idea that Middleburg did with using some of those monies to promote the businesses in town. Piggybacking on economic development, I think we can do that. Was bang for the buck. My concern is we don't have a lot of time. Did any of the other towns receive these monies? Or are we the only one? Okay.
No, that's what, so like the town of Occoquan, they utilize their Merchants Guild to help facilitate the funds as that third party. I do not know what Quantico did, and I have not been able to reach out to Dumfries. But I know that Middleburg, they actually did it with the vouchers and everything prior to the CARES Act and all that coming out. So what they did is they actually purchased a certain number of vouchers. So let's say you purchased $25 vouchers to different restaurants that were willing and able to do this program. Then what would happen is the residents that got these vouchers, they did it, every utility paying resident in town got these vouchers. So then, for example, you would go and you take your $25 voucher and you go to a certain restaurant. If you spent $20, it didn't matter. That business got $25 for it, you don't get any change back. You got your food.
That's outside of the CARE Act. That's outside.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that could be
That wasn't
considered.
reimbursed.
So that, you're correct, that wasn't reimbursed. However, depending on how we did this, if this was food assistance for residents here in town, in relation to the CARES Act for individuals that lost their job or lost the amount of income, then that's something that may be able to qualify.
So the point being, and if the other towns have done it too, maybe if you have a listserv that you go with to see if we can piggyback on, share resources or information with them on how to implement that. In terms of the split, when Chris and I and Emily spoke earlier today about the split, I guess if we transition to the residential side, I know folks in my neighborhood their assistance is ending this week, I guess, the assistance, and so we're gonna see, we're a fairly affluent community, but we have a lot of folks that are paycheck to paycheck and blue collar, and they're gonna be in trouble. So, but a lot of this is getting the communication out. How do we, to your earlier point, how do we get people to know that it's here? So utilizing all our email blasts, everything else that we can do to let people know and start putting an application process together and come in. But that would, in my mind, would be a top priority. Did we need to transition specifically to residential, or are we just covering businesses first?
No, I think we could.
Okay.
Bob, you had some comments you wanted. Was it residential or business?
Okay. Look at that, he's stoic. He's not talking.
Oh, good, let's talk. He's
There you go.
frozen.
So the residential side, again, setting up an application process, setting up some deadlines. It seems like, ahead of the third meeting, if we can get a basic kind of outline of where it went. I'm of the opinion that we should probably rely, because it's only $147,000, which isn't insignificant, but maybe we want to weight it more on the residential side first, see what the interest is, and then it seems like with all these restrictions on businesses, we may not get that much feedback. So, those are my comments, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have several, if I could. First of all, my concern, everybody's got some valid points here, and I know we got some decisions to make, but $20 an hour, Chris, I got to tell you, I pay my crewmen more than that. I don't think you're going to get anybody worth their weight in salt for $20 an hour. Just my opinion. With what they're looking at, this is, it's not shoe clerk work. So that's just my opinion. But the other thing is, as I think Bob or Chris, Joe, somebody brought up, is if businesses have already received funding, it would be nice if we knew that, so that we don't, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but we got to make sure everybody gets their share.
Not double dipping.
Is what I'm saying, not double dipping. So if there's a way that we can find out what businesses have done that, I think that'd really help us out.
My point in raising that topic, though, was to see if there actually was a need from the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the businesses may not. Do we know if any businesses closed its doors? One. What type of business was it?
One recent business, they closed as of March 13th, which was actually before COVID.
What type of business was it?
It was like a fireplace installation, gas
Okay.
installation.
Oh.
As far as one thing I can want to say though is when we did extend the deadline for the business license, I could tell you maybe 5 took advantage of it, and it wasn't for any other reason that they just felt that, oh, I can hold on to my money a little bit longer, might as well do it. It wasn't because they were in need of assistance. Many of them still paid it on time. Obviously, coming this year's budget, that may change. It's definitely going to affect the B polls, but when we extended that, not many took advantage of it. A lot of them paid on time.
Most of those businesses, that was on the previous year,
Correct.
right? So they probably planned for it and budgeted for it. To your
Correct.
point, it's going to be next year.
Right.
That's where
Right.
I think we're going to see the drop
Right,
and the
right.
challenge.
Right.
And our money won't be around then.
So where do we go from here? I mean,
Is it possible for you to have a deadline when to maybe come up with and, what? Bob?
somebody was raising his hand.
Yeah, he can wait. Is it possible to have like a deadline as far as giving us an idea if you could put your hands on a person like what you spoke about, who could come alongside to help with it? Because I do appreciate what you said, that with the amount of documentation and procedures that we have to follow, and to be quite honest, there are a lot of things that this council is demanding from the staff. If we could get that person on board, do you think in a week's time you could identify the person, or even come back to council to say the person is out there? You see what I'm saying?
I think
Because I want to couple it with what Marshall said, we have to act on this now if we're going to do it, and I'm leaning towards a lot of it being the residents.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, depending on how it's weighted, if it's 80-20 resident to, some business assistance, then I think the main focus is trying to get the information out to the residents and get the application prepared and ready to be able to get those funds and the grants out there for, the mortgage, rental assistance, healthcare, those things. So then I don't think necessarily it'd be advantageous for us to spend a lot of time trying to find somebody like that. But if it's more of a 50-50 split, then maybe. Because I was going to say, just between me reaching out to Prince William County, Economic Development, and Manassas, and some of the other localities, I will get a good indication by Monday if we'd be able to find somebody of that caliber. or not.
So let me phrase it a different way. If the council decides on an 80-20 split in favor of majority going to residents, you're saying that it would be we could do this in-house?
I think it would be possible, depending
Okay.
on what the recommendations were.
Okay,
Yes.
I understand. Robert?
Thank you. I think it's a bit premature at this point in time to come up with a split, whether it's 80-20, 50-50. I mean, if we want to set a bar, I mean, just pick 50-50 and adjust from there down the road, because we don't know what the need, if there is a need, is going to be.
Right.
And I don't think we're going to know that until we go out to both the business community and the residents, because as COVID drags on, I think you've got two problems that are coming forward quickly, and that's if on the business side, if the governor reinstitutes shutdowns, and if there are more severe restrictions on businesses, as we're starting to see down in Tidewater, then the impact might be more significant on the businesses in the short term than we thought. The other part of the equation is, where do the residents stand right now? As COVID drags on and people are having issues with employment, for example, whether they're working from home or they're laid off or whatever the situation is, I think we're getting into the territory now where we're going to start to see people who are missing rent payments or mortgage payments. So since that's one of the things that we can use the COVID funds for, is to offset people who are having problems making their mortgage payments or having problems making their rent payments. I mean, personally, I would rather see it go to those people than it go to the businesses. I mean, it might be short-sighted on my part for that, but I mean, that's where my sympathies lie, at least immediately. But I don't think we know enough right now to determine what the percentage we want to do with that funding is. To Chris's point about putting this on the staff, I agree. What I would like to see done, and I'm doing this from 300 miles away, what I would like to see is some manner of outreach to those jurisdictions that have already begun the program, and then rather than, bring in a part-time staffer, if we could have somebody that does this on a contract basis or a flat fee basis, to do some sort of consulting, where we know what the upfront cost is going to be, I'd be a whole lot more comfortable with that. Is that practical? Perhaps not, but I think it's something that we need to look at.
Well, from
And it
here.
looks like I lost you.
Nope, you're there. So from here, what I'll do then is 50-50 split. That is $73,863 for business as well as resident. So right there, just below $75,000. I'll put a call out there to all the different regional groups and everything else to see if there's anybody in particular that is up to date and very knowledgeable in regards to the COVID relief and different money and availability that's out there, and see if I can have you guys, either an individual or a person, by Monday.
I think also you have to reach out to the businesses and get some kind of an assessment from them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. We can send that Survey Monkey out to see how everybody is. We can get some questions together to send that out. I just asked if we can go ahead and try and send some pretty generic questions to see, what they're hurting and what they're experiencing right now, to get that out sooner rather than later, so we can try and get some respondents back for Monday as well.
Right.
So if we can do the survey, reach out to the other localities, see how they did it, and then see if there's anybody that is knowledgeable.
And I think Marchand's point is a really good point, though, because a lot of these programs are ending for individuals, for folks. And I agree. We've got to kind of get a sense of where that is in this town. And I for one, don't have any idea who's going to be in a tough spot coming August, unless they do some other extensions or what have you. So how would you go about reaching out to folks in town, other than word of mouth, of course? That would be one way, I guess.
The only other way is that we could ask for a Survey Monkey for residents specifically, and do it on like our Facebook and website. And this is where really I'd have to do a call to action to you guys to help get it out as soon as possible. And then we can also try on the newsletter. But I kind of feel like you guys were saying we need to kind of have some idea of what's happening sooner rather than later.
You can use your HOA liaisons. Your HOA communicate that way. If I can make a suggestion, you talked a lot about good ideas today when we spoke earlier. It would be helpful if you have, especially in the business side, where if there's not an individual requirement, business requirement, the more global things that you offered, the picnic tables, what would that run? If you have, I mean, not going to estimates, but those ideas, the one about the radio broadcast, if you could list some of those options from which we can start to begin, I think that might be helpful too. And then on the residential side, listing those out, I think having kind of a general list of that may help us get to a decision or recommendation more quickly. So, my suggestion.
Do you have an action plan, Chris? You good?
I'll have one tomorrow morning. We'll take care of it.
Okay, last chance for this topic. I think Chris has got a full plate.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to the next item then, the ARB bylaws.
So the ARB bylaws, this is the set of bylaws that the ARB passed in June to go to the town council for the adoption. Do you want to speak on the public hearing necessity of the ARB bylaws?
No, so the bylaws are a self-governing document. This is not something that's The applicants aren't basically subject to sections of the bylaws. It just helps the operation of it, so that's why this is not something that needs to have a public hearing. So that is something that I ran by the town attorney as well, so I just.
But the council needs to adopt.
Correct. So the council needs to adopt it, just like, in case something is appealed, you guys understand how the ARB operates and their operating guidelines. So other than that, I was going to say, I think Mayor and Marchant were pivotal in establishing this document. So if you have questions, I'd actually probably defer to them about the specific changes to it.
Yeah, I do, actually. Really quickly, the historic building inventory.
Okay.
So I think there needs to be some adjustments to that. For example, 6706 Jefferson Street, looks like that's gone, right? Wasn't that demolished? The Gossam House? Or am I mistaken?
Correct. So this was meant to be an appendix that can be updated.
Yeah.
So I think until we, if I understand correctly, as part of the comp plan, they're going to update that list to add some and remove some.
Oh, okay, good.
So the idea that Chris Keenan suggested to us was just adding those as addendums, and then we'll just re-adopt, or we want to re-adopt, or just switch them out if necessary?
We can update it, because as of right now, that is what is also in the comprehensive plan for the town.
So,
You know what, I'll just give you my comments.
okay. But we were aware that some of that was outdated, but that it would have to be updated part of the comp plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think overall, the idea was to try to go back to all the governing documents that help us arrive at a decision. So the ordinance, the comp plan, the guidelines, it's all highlighted in there, so.
Okay. So one more question. What exactly does it mean that the town council, after consultation with the board, what does consultation actually mean? In other words, you remember when we were, okay, yeah, when we were going through the whole thing about the demolition permits, and an appeal was made to the council to override your decision on the ARB. So, I mean, in the bylaws, it talks about consultation with the board. So what exactly does that mean? How do you consult? Is that done together as a working group?
Did you want to offer that first?
I think it should be clearly stated, I think it should be that it is in a group session, so the board and the council are meeting at the same time, same place, having a face-to-face work session or joint public meeting. Because consultation, you're correct, it could be a discussion that one council member goes to each board member individually, tries to gather a consensus, and the next thing you know, they've consulted. So I think we should clearly define
That's right.
the intent.
Yeah, I think a definition would be good because, that could also just be word of the liaison.
So it's consultation, that would be in the ordinance, though. Might come from the ordinance, we'll double check, but.
I will check.
It is in the ordinance.
Okay, that's.
It's another, right, appendix part,
No, we probably need to update.
but, yeah.
When I read I would agree with Emily in reading the consultation. Some may argue that the consultation was the denial. That was, they vetted it, they put it together, they made you, and you rely on the record as the consultation. But I would align with Emily that I would prefer that, I would suggest that the two groups meet together to be able to understand all that, have that dialogue and back and forth. Some argue an appeals de novo, where you hear it on its merits and don't get in, the Boy Scout sign is 3. Okay. So yes, I think there needs to be, I would agree that in the zoning ordinance update, we needed to do that.
Just didn't like the way that was.
Yes, Spock.
To add on that real quick, we did have this previously come up not too long ago, as you were mentioning, and I think it is very beneficial to have at least the liaison of the council present the findings, but I think it's more important to have the entirety of the board consult and provide the findings and explain. I think we were missing that in our last issue where this came up, and so, maybe the council wasn't fully aware of the board's full standing, so I would highly encourage it.
Almost like a report, almost like a report. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, Bob.
I don't know where this process went off the rails several months ago, but in my view, the bylaws of the ARB should be the operating procedures of the ARB and nothing else. If we're talking about how the ARB interacts with the council or what the results of an ARB action are and what sort of appeals process there is, that sort of thing. That's beyond the scope of the bylaws. And quite frankly, these addendums to the bylaws with respect to the historic structures, that's part of the comp plan. That's not part of the bylaws. You know, and I've never quite understood how we got from the point that we were at with the existing ARB bylaws to where we are now. I suspect there's some personal animosity from a previous board that's involved here. Quite frankly, I'm done with it. My take is the ARB should come up with their operational procedures, adopt their bylaws, and those are their bylaws, and that's up to them. We've got nothing to do with that. Those are their operational rules. And I don't see that we need to be signing off on that or getting involved in that in any sense or manner whatsoever. And if there's an issue with what they do and how they do it, that's a zoning ordinance and an appeals process thing that is outside of their operational bylaws. So, like I said, I don't know how we ended up at this point, at this juncture, but I think we're making it unduly complicated. And quite frankly, I don't think it benefits either the ARB or the town council to go down this rabbit hole. I think we should let them set their operational procedures in place. I mean, they're pretty standard. Most of it follows Robert's rules, and that's all your bylaws generally are. I mean, they're based in some respect on the ordinance and what their powers are, but I think we're making this overly complicated.
May I respond?
Feel free.
So, Bob, I think in the first place, we don't have the bylaws, so this is out of necessity that the ordinance requires that we have it. So I also question the necessity of the council to be able to adopt it, but under the explanation that it makes sense that, you know, as the appellate body and as the group that appointed the board, that it makes sense to have that. The appendices, to your point, I think that was a throwback to where, when these items were coming up to the board, there was some, there was a concern that all the relevant documents were not being relayed as part of the decision or accounted for, which a report or some other means may be the better way to do it in the future. One suggestion then is here, we have in the addendum on packet page 16, we simply cite those other documents that relate to our decision, which I think is important. If someone picks this up and reads it, it's important to say that these are the documents we come to. Or incorporation by reference. So rather than having the specific appendices, which become problematic because they are amended, maybe we strike the specific appendices and just keep the addendum, the addendum statement. Does that make sense? So I don't know if you have that in front of you, but that would be my suggestion on how to alleviate some of the confusion on there and some of the cross-reference and citations to the ordinances and comp plan as they change. But I was not clear on why the council needed to review it. I'm more comfortable with the explanation now. And with that one modest, the bulk of it is, as you say, just procedural and how we move from month to month, give some specificity to the ambiguity from the ordinance, and then just make that one change if that's the prerogative of the council.
I tend to see it a little bit differently than Bob. I think the town council needs to review it. Once we have it in place and once it's approved, it then becomes a document that then the ARB may take it later on and add things to or amend. But I think the town council needs to be involved, especially in putting the set document together. I did have one personal idiosyncrasy concerning the ARB, and it has to do with the voting ability of the who's that person who is the liaison? The liaison to the town council, correct me if I'm wrong, has the ability to vote, yes?
Correct.
So if the ARB sees an item and it's going to the town council for voting, that means you have one person who's going to vote twice.
Same with the planning commission as well.
And my objection to that also. that the liaison to the PC and the ARB should not have a vote in. That's just my personal views. I mean, this is something that we could discuss. I've just always had an issue with the liaison having a voice. They're there, they're discussing, but for them to vote twice, I find it an issue. And if you go back to looking at past issues, you started seeing the influences of the liaison in the ARB/PC, and then their influences on the council. I think it brings about an issue when that individual may have certain leaning towards a certain decision. So that's just my personal view, Mr. Mayor. Maybe it's something that we need to pick up later on, or maybe it's a non-issue with the other council members, and it's just like, okay, Chris, you're crazy, or you had too much coffee. But I just always had this inclination not, to always bring it up to say the liaison should not have a voting right on the committee. Yeah, exactly.
Your comments, Bob?
I'm perfectly willing to take up the discussion at a later date on that particular aspect of it. I would just simply note that that could lead to problems with quorums and votes and that sort of thing. And that's understandable, and that's a topic for another day. I think what I'm still unclear on here is, are we talking about bylaws or are we talking about ARB guidelines? Because they're two separate things. The bylaws are the operational procedures by which the ARB operates. The guidelines are the structure of what they're considering. So if we're talking about the ARB guidelines, I've got no problem with the council having a voice in that. But in terms of the operational procedures of the ARB, I don't know why we're fooling around with that. If that's the only issue right now, is their structure and their operational guidelines, yeah, I don't believe it's appropriate for the council to be telling them how to run their meetings. The guidelines, on the other hand, that's a separate story. And that's a discussion I am more than willing and more than happy to have. But in terms of just getting this off our plate and moving it down the road, if it's simply a matter of, the timeline by which they appoint a chair, how they elect their vice chair, how they do operationally their votes and that sort of stuff, that's up to them. That's not up to us. And I'm not aware of any sort of municipal organization. If you look at the county, to the various boards they've got, Planning Commission, Historic Commission, Soils and Water, that sort of thing. None of that stuff, at least to my knowledge, is handled by the county board. So why are we even talking about this?
But right now we have a new ARB. I mean, the ARB has how many members? Five. And how many of them were just recently appointed?
3.
We're going to put the bylaws in the hands of 4 brand new ARB members? That's what I'm saying. Once we get this bylaws down, and once we have it written, approved by a town council that has 40 years experience in the town, we put it in place, and if there are adjustments to be made later on, then we could make it later on.
Well, I do agree with Bob, though. I mean, that was my stance, 2 and 3 years ago when we were really discussing this, but I got squashed on it.
Why? What? That you should have been doing your own bylaws?
Well, the bylaws are just operational procedures, nothing more.
Yeah, but with the old ARB, I would agree with, because you had the experiences on it, but we don't have it now. So that's what I'm saying. You have 3 or 4 brand new members on the ARB, but you have 40 years experience from the town council. Why don't we just take it, put the bylaws in place, and then any future issues that we have concerning it?
But the one thing we do have is we have continuity with the previous ARB with Marchant. Who
one
can-
person.
But he understands.
Ken.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And
Marchant.
Ken. And Ken.
Well, Ken's not on there anymore.
Oh, that's right.
That's my point. You're the continuity. You're the guy, you're the connector, okay? And you have the experience, as was shown at the meeting last week, because you ran the meeting up, pretty much the whole meeting, right? So, and you were involved with Ken on the ARB putting together the bylaws or updating them. So I'd like to hear from Marshawn about that as well,
About,
what we're talking about.
well, just like, as part of the explanation earlier, I mean, reading through it here, clearly the ordinance authorizes the board to adopt the bylaws and the rules. So it was not, I'm sorry to repeat myself, it does not seem clear why the council would want to do that. The council has more or less appointed a body to implement the ordinance, implement the land use vision, and implement the guidelines. Even with the guidelines, you're asking a body, giving them the roles and responsibilities to specialize in that topic. So then to come back, to me, is if there's something blatantly wrong or something difficult to administer in those guidelines, and as the council that has to liaise with the community, that makes sense. I guess to me, it would be one of those things, if the council was heavily editing it and sending it back, that might be problematic. But as a formality to just say, we have these bylaws, out of a practical reason, you need to be made aware of them, then it makes sense to have the council, if not adopt them, at least be provided a copy so that you're aware of it. But I had the same reservations that Bob did and Ken and others, saying, does this open itself up to where we're being told what to do when we were otherwise given the authority to carry it out? And there's some potential for abuse. I don't see that. And I think it's a good tool to adopt, and that's all I have to say about it.
Did you have any comments, Joe? You have some, Bob? Any more?
No, I'm good. I mean, I'm not going to die on this hill. I think we're overthinking it, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, would you be amenable to the group? Well, I guess we'd have to take it back to the ARB, but dropping the appendices, but simply reference in the addendum, that might be something to think about.
If it's simply a matter of they're adopting their rules and procedures without that appendix, and without things that impact their guidelines and that sort of thing, yeah, that I'm fine with leaving it up to them to adopt what they want for their rules of operation. And I think that's, quite frankly, I mean, that's sort of the definition of the bylaws, isn't it? It's simply their operational procedures and nothing else.
Well, we do have that there. I guess we refer to the guidelines by reference, because that's what the ordinance talks about it. But it is what you're saying. It is the rules and operating procedures of the ARB.
But the guidelines are still separate from the bylaws. So long as the guidelines are separate, then I don't have an issue leaving the bylaws up to them.
Correct.
The guidelines, that's a different story.
Correct, and I think the way it's written, it is written the way you described. The architectural guidelines are not attached to this other than by reference that they exist.
So, do you want a resolution prepared for next week saying that we levy the responsibility of the bylaws to be managed by the ARB?
I mean, Martin seemed pretty adamant.
Need that, or is it just a...
I mean, just, I know I'm not trying to throw this in the middle of it, but, you know, for example, in the bylaws, it does discuss meetings. So then if ARB decided they want to have 3 meetings a month, is that going to be because then that has budget impacts and stuff like that. So these decisions aren't made in a vacuum that only affect the ARB. So that's one of the reasons why, like I think Marshawn was saying, that it is a body that is appointed by town council. And at the same reason, that's why in the town code, if you guys would like to, you have the ability to remove members of the ARB. So that's something why I think, even though, yes, it is the procedures and how it's operated, I think it is a good practice for you all to get them in front of you and help make the decision that, like you said, if there was something egregious, which, you know, we worked really hard to make sure there isn't anything in this particular document, that you guys would be able to catch it prior to them, you know, operating something that was totally unnecessary and not in the vision that you guys are trying to establish for the next 3 to 5 years, like we mentioned earlier. But, I mean, really, it's up to you all for the decision.
My feeling is they come up, levy it on the ARB, but I agree with Chris. I think it should come before the council for us to review it and approve it.
This is Article 12 amendments. Any member of the board may propose amendments to these bylaws by giving a written notice of the proposed amendment to the secretary at least 30 days in advance of the meeting at which they are to be voted upon. If a majority of the board votes to approve the proposed amendment, the amended bylaws shall be forwarded to the town council and shall take effect upon the approval of the town council. The town council is the ultimate authority.
So what page are we on? I'm sorry.
This is Article 12.
Article
Page
12.
16. So that's the way we wrote it, based on the guidance that the council needed to step in
And personally, I still feel like the council should still have the final say, and that's a good point that Chris brought up a while ago. That you could have this is not taking away any authority at all from the ARB. This is just giving them the guidelines that we're looking forward to as the elected body in going forward. These are the bylaws that they should operate from, and in addition to the guidelines of which they have some leeway in adjusting some things in their guidelines, but we're the ones directing. In the same breath, we're the ones that remove from the ARB if as we see fit. But I don't think it's going to take that long in us taking this on, review and approve it and kick it down to the ARB for them to operate from this as bylaws.
I think this current form is ready for action.
It's ready, yeah.
It's
For
ready
me,
for the
it's
council
ready.
to vote on it.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking. Like the board, the town council is ready to act on this document, send it to the ARB, and said, "Here are your bylaws. You are an appointed body."
We agree. We agree.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty agnostic about this, so, I mean,
To your point, if the 3 new members want to amend it, there's a mechanism with which.
There is.
So.
And if they wanted to write a letter to say, hey, we need to meet 4 times a month, they vote on it and they send it to town council and we vote it down and send it back to them and said no, if that's the direction we choose to vote.
Okay.
But I think there is some safety mechanism in here so an ARB doesn't run amok, lean in one direction or change in certain things. What if they come back and change to say that amended that said you don't have to review an application, before you vote on it?
It's a checks and balance.
Yeah, it's checks and and it comes right back up to us, the elected body.
Okay, everyone good with that then? Then we'll move forward with that in the meeting, in the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
because that's still on the agenda.
And as Bob said, we can discuss later on. Are you smoking in the meeting, Bob?
Yes, he is.
No, not me.
As Bob said, we can discuss later on my the
Would
point
you like me
that
to move the beach? Would you like me to move with the scene to the beach?
the point that I
I
made
can put that in the background if you'd like.
concerning the voting ability of the liaison. We can discuss that later on, and the council can decide on that.
So we'll go to the next agenda item, the budget discussions.
So this was something that Finance Liaison and Councilman Weir had provided as a discussion starting point, I do believe. So I'll basically yield the floor to him to provide his reasoning.
So you're on, Bob.
Okay. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this tonight. This was simply a starting point for the discussion. I think that we need to, in the October-November timeframe, adjust the budget according to what our what our revenue streams are and where we want the monies to go. What I sent everybody by email is simply a starting point, and I think Joe and I would both appreciate any input that anybody's got for it. I'll run quickly through the Word document because that sort of encapsulates the changes or the proposed initial changes. There's obviously the 71,000 plus for the Laney detail that we have to accommodate so that the PD can use that money. That is reflected further down in the PD expenditures. I did not, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not. It's probably more of a question for Roberta or not. But you look at on the revenue side, you've got 71,650, and then on the salaries and wages for the Laney detail, you've got 71,650. But out of that 71,650, have to come a portion of taxes, other bennies, that sort of thing. So is it easier to do it that way? Do it strictly as a pass-through or recover the admin cost of the salary through that line item? Probably. Roberto might have a bit of a different take on it. I'll leave it up to him on that. Getting down to the expenditures, in looking at the actuals versus the budget over the last couple of years, and trying to refocus some resources on some things that, quite frankly, the last town council left out of the adopted budget. And while I'm talking about adopted budget, I do have a request for Chris and the mayor, and that is at the next consultation with legal counsel. What I would like to know is, as the previous council not only appropriated but also allocated the entirety of the budget for the entirety of the year, is that something that could be undone by this council, and can we go to a quarterly or a semi-annual allocation of the appropriated funds? And I say that because I don't know where we're going to stand in 3 to 6 months. Continuing. On the expenditure side, Roberto disagrees with me a little bit on this one in terms of the reduction of the town council's wages. I ran some rough numbers based on historic trends. We may have to reduce that, reduce the cut from 10,000 to 8 or 7,000, but at this point in time, until somebody can prove to me otherwise, I think the 10,000 cut is defensible. Same thing with the part-time town administrator. Again, I'm going to sit down and talk with Roberto and Chris about this a little bit more. This was based on my preliminary discussions about where they intended to go in terms of part-time staff in the future, or in the, more precisely in terms of the immediate future, given where we stand right now with COVID and operational hours and that sort of thing. Like I say, it's just a placeholder for the time being. Meals and lodging, that's based strictly on prior numbers. Same thing with convention and education. When you get down to the capital outlay and machinery and equipment, that's also a placeholder, but it's a $5,000 plus addition to the budget. As many of you are aware, my particular view of where we stand with data security, backup and servers and that sort of thing, I think it's a disgrace how we have allowed our internal facilities and our internal ability to maintain our own files has regressed to the point that it is right now, where we don't have full accountability for our own records. My suspicion is $5,000 is probably not enough to get us back to where I would be comfortable with the accuracy and the veracity of our records and our ability to keep them. But again, $5,000 is just a starting place for the discussion. And if you look, your net admin cuts across the administrative level of the town governance is roughly 4.9%. Getting to the PD. I know this is not going to make some people happy, but I've been looking. Roberto was kind enough to give me a 5-year window. I think he's given it to everybody else. A spreadsheet detailing both the initial allocation, the amended budget at the end of the year, and the actuals. And quite frankly, the numbers scare the hell out of me. I said this prior to sitting on council, and I've said it for quite a number of years. I think the explosive growth in our PD budgeting is unsustainable, not only in the long term, but quite frankly in the short term as well. I've had discussions with both Roberto and Chris with respect to a variety of the different ways that we do our overtime and our holiday pay and that sort of thing, and I've got some other issues that I'm going to work out, and this will probably change over time. But again, these are simply placeholders for the time being for everybody to consider. The part-time wages expenditure is particularly bothersome to me. If you look at it over time, and you look at it last year, for example, it rose up to in excess of $40,000 from the actual budget. And you're looking at, over a 5-year window, a 447% increase. Now, is part of that a result of officers leaving and going someplace else and having to be replaced, at least on a temporary basis, by part-timers? Absolutely. However, I think at the end of the day, that expenditure has grown beyond what is acceptable for a town of our size. Same thing when you get all the way down to vehicle fuels. That cost has grown 20%, yet the cost of fuel has actually dropped in the last 3 years. I think one of the things that, if we're going to refocus our resources to accommodate what the expressed desires of the town are, or at least the residents that I've heard of, we need to start looking at becoming a little more efficient in certain areas. And I think we need to revisit what previous town councils have done, which is address the vehicle policy, which is if you don't live in close proximity to the town or you don't live in Prince William County, that vehicle stays in town. And we don't assume the cost, both the fuel cost and the maintenance cost, for extended mileage. Same thing with telecom and computer, internet, that sort of thing. The one point I think that I'm going to have to revise is the legal services, because I understand we're contracted at that level. I will go with get in contact with Roberto more about that. And then the last line item in that particular thing for the PD is the uniform and police supplies, and I'm going to be really, really blunt about this. Over the last 3 years, we have supplied the police department in that particular line item to an extraordinary extent. And quite frankly, we have done that at the cost of accommodating other portions of the town and other parts of the town councils and the town administration's budget. I'm not comfortable with the level at which we have funded that particular line item. It seems like every time something comes up, it becomes more of an I want rather than an I need list. And I personally cannot accommodate continued spending at that level if it's simply something that the PD wishes to have but doesn't necessarily need to have. I know there are going to be a variety of different takes on that, and I'm open to the discussion. Like I said, this is all about opening the discussion on all of this stuff. When you get down to the community park, the previous councils only allocated us $20,000 to maintain the Haymarket Park. In looking at the maintenance cost alone of keeping that park open, the grass trimmed, and that sort of thing, I don't think that begins to cover the actual cost. And if that is going to be one of the focuses and one of the things that we want to target to attract people or to benefit the residents, I think we need to pump that up to at least maintain it at its current operational capacity. Same thing with events. No, we're not going to get the revenue from Haymarket Day, and we're not going to be able to underwrite everything with the receipts from the vendors and that sort of thing. So I think for at least this year, we're going to have to fund something out of our own pocket. Do I like doing it? No. Is it the reality? I believe it is. And one of the places that I think we can draw down funding to cover that and the parks, apart from the PD and the admin costs, is down in the community development lines. We're talking about consulting engineers. A lot of that is a pass-through. I don't think we need to list it at 50 grand. It doesn't get offset on the revenue side like it should be. And I think that and the consultants for the comp plan are terribly overpriced. Like I've said this before, the comp plan as it's currently constituted in its draft form was finished 5 years ago. And we spent, Marshawn, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere between $50,000 to $80,000 for that draft document. I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think we have to update it, and I don't think it's going to cost us, or it shouldn't cost us, or we shouldn't allocate the expenditure that was put in the budget to cover that. I mean, that contemplates essentially an entire rewrite of it and redoing the base documentation that's already done. I mean, if the numbers were changed 5 years ago and we cut a lot of stuff out, I don't see any purpose in having another consultant tell us the exact same thing they did it 5 years ago. I think it's merely a matter of reviewing and updating, particularly with respect to the census data that's going to come out. So I mean, we're looking January, February, March for a completed comp plan to come to the board, but I don't think the out-of-pocket expenditure on that is nearly is going to require nearly what was put in the budget. I think that's silly. And then you get down into blight mitigation. If we're going to be serious about blight mitigation, then we need to put some money behind it. We need to put the money where our mouths are. And that's why I bumped it up from $20,000 to $50,000. Of course, that's all going to change when the, pardon me, I went off the page here. When we get the actual revenues and what the anticipated surplus is. And if I understand correctly from Roberto, the surplus is actually higher than what I have currently got down there at 145. Thus, the total unallocated will increase. And my preliminary suggestions for what to do with both the savings from the expenditure side of the house and from the surplus side is to divide it into three allocations in no particular order and in no particular amount. I've got some suggestions here based on the preliminary numbers. One is a streetscape block box fund. We had initially, and I sat on the town council when they passed the meals tax and fought vociferously against it, but if it is our goal to finish the streetscape and continue to do maintenance on it, and we're coming due on some significant maintenance costs, then we need to establish a streetscape block box fund where we can put money into that, and the money sits there and does nothing but cover streetscape expenditures, either for expansion of it or for maintenance. I also think that given the policies of the last couple of years, we need to establish a reserve contribution to build up our reserves, because I think they've come down to dangerously low levels in the last couple of years, at least in terms of liquid cash. And I think we should also establish, at least for this year, based on the uncertainties of COVID and where the tax revenues may or may not fall because of COVID, we should probably establish some manner of emergency fund. Like I said, all of this is placeholders. This is all for discussion. I just wanted to throw this out to everybody. I don't anticipate asking for any action on this from the financial side until October at the earliest, but I think we need to discuss it in August and September so that we can schedule a public hearing at the September meeting and have the numbers locked down to the extent that that's possible by the end of the September meeting so that we can have an accurate notice for a public hearing in October. And I'll let everybody have at it and tear out their daggers and rip into me now.
I'd be glad to start. Roberto, do you agree with Bob that the PD budget is not sustainable?
I do. This is something that business manager Jerry Shiro and myself had discussed in the past. With the desire of the past council wanting to lower taxes, real estate taxes especially, but continue to support the services It was very, we were very honest and told them that it's not sustainable to do both at the same time. It's something that we was always discussing it, and it's being addressed now. But you know, it's a discussion. There was an open communication between the business manager, myself, the then acting town manager, and chief. That you know, it was certain decisions we gave opinions on, and we were just council voted differently.
Okay, because this is the first time that I've heard you say it wasn't sustainable. First time. And that concerns me. The other thing is, I was told from the start that the vehicles were going to be targeted from our police department. And because nobody up here other than myself has been in that shoe, has sat in those seats, worn that badge, carried that gun, and understand what you're facing every damn day. And taking their cars is absolutely ridiculous. Will not support it. Absolutely will not support that. That is a small amount. These officers, what they bring to this town, everybody here has seen it. Everybody here has seen what this team brings to us in our town. And they get nothing but compliments. Nothing but compliments. They have saved lives. 3 lives, 1 officer. 3 lives. The little things add up in this, and none of you, to include Bob Weir, has sat in that seat and seen and feel what they have to do every day, especially in this environment we're at now with these idiots attacking our police officers, the war on the law enforcement. And that is absolutely unacceptable. And then we add on to that, talking about, and I'm not saying some of the budget may need to be decreased. I'm not arguing that bit. But the cars is absolutely, I was told from the start, Bob Weir was going to target that. And it's just unacceptable. I will not support that. I will not support that in the least. And I hope the hell nobody else does either. As far as the budget, total budget, I am willing to look at that and see where those budget cuts are going to, where they'd go and everything else. But I would want this police officer, the chief, and I'll sit with him one-on-one, I don't care, to get his input on every one of these cuts. It's his department. He knows what he's doing. So just to reiterate, I will not support taking these officers' cars from them. And Roberto, I'm disappointed that this is the first time you have sat there and said it's not sustainable.
Well, if I can just add to that, back in 2015-16, when the council voted to purchase these vehicles, the question came up on the cost for taking these vehicles home. You remember, Joe?
I very much remember.
It came back to the council that it would cost $3,000 in fuel. That was what number, and then once the council heard that, the council approved it, because we believe that that was nothing compared to what it would give as an not an entitlement, that's the wrong word, as a perk for the officers taking home the vehicles. So as far as what you're discussing, when the council did the research back in, when we purchased those vehicles, 15? 17?
Yes.
When we purchased those vehicles, that was one of the questions that came up, and I voted for them taking home the vehicles. Now, if that has changed, if that amount has changed, then that is something that we as a council have to look at to see what other areas we probably need to cut or adjust. But I think the areas that are mentioned do need to be revised, and that's where we have to lean on the chief to see if it is an amount that we need to discuss to say, is that something that the council is willing to say, hey, this is a perk for them being officers. And I've even asked too, because they're not necessarily those who live in Prince William County, but those who live outside or across the state line, they park their vehicles. They don't take it across state line. They park it at an agency's, an office, a secured location and drive their personal vehicle across. So I know definitely as far as it relates to the state of Virginia, no one takes it outside of the state. So as far as the fuel cost, for us, I think it is something that we may still be in line with. When you look at the fuel cost that's here, and the line item for the fuel costs, this is, it is hard to assess how much it costs the town for an officer taking home the vehicle. Outside of that, and I appreciate Steve sharing those sentiments. Outside of that, when you look at the budget in general, I would love to see a budget that sticks close to the proposed amount. Because if we are to be fair to the town, it is hard to make amendments. When you look at the budget every year, at the end of each year, basically the PD goes over a certain amount, and then the council approves to catch up to where it belongs. And my personal view is that's not how a budget runs. The way I understand budget is that you get a budget and you stick to it, and you review it, whether it be monthly, every 3 months or every 6 months you review it, and if there are adjustments need to be made. So in this vast amount of things here that Bob Weir is, and again, it's proposing, there is no line item here of removing vehicles or from the officers. I would have a hard time taking away that perk of a vehicle unless it is costing us a vast amount for maintaining the vehicle. Because there is, our maintenance of the vehicles did go up, but I don't know if that's because of them taking home the vehicles. So us looking at these items individually is something that's going to help us in assessing what areas can be curtailed, what areas can be shaved, and then with the chief's input on this. Chief, have you had an opportunity to look at these?
Today was the first time that I saw this. I was not asked any questions about this. Multiple items on here aren't right. The numbers aren't correct. And had I been asked, a lot of these items wouldn't have been on here because I would have been able to explain why you can't cut that. But no, I haven't been asked.
Let me be fair here. This is a straw man. This is just the beginning of the conversation. I happen to think this is a good start for the communication of looking at the entire budget. Okay? What we need to do is we need to align our revenues with our expenses, or the other way around, our expenses to the revenues. That's the real challenge here. We don't know where we're headed with COVID, plus we don't know where we're headed with other things. And what we need to do, and I think what Bob is trying to do here, and I support him in this effort, what he's trying to do is to basically open this up and show everybody that the growth in our budget is and may not be sustainable. Okay. So for example, this police budget, and nobody is saying taking away anything from anybody. And by the way, that was a campaign slogan out there that really ticked a lot of people off.
Not a slogan, a slur.
Thank you.
What was that?
That we were going to look to diminish or eliminate the police department. And I will tell you something else. When we were talking about these cars, I had some real questions about officers taking these cars home. Not just for the fuel costs, but for the overall maintenance costs and what it was going to cost the folks in this town. Okay. And what it's going to cost the folks of this town. We need to really take a look at the entire budget and align it to what our vision is going forward. Okay. So just as an aside here, I personally think that the officers, unless they're within a certain perimeter, should leave the cars here because of the costs associated with it. Now, we can have the discussion about tactical and response times and what have you. That's fine. We should have that conversation. But frankly, can we continue to afford this, especially going forward with COVID? I don't know. There are other things happening here. It's called an opportunity cost. There are things that have to be done out here. The streets, the sidewalks, the park, other things. So we've got these competing priorities. What's the correct balance? I think that's where Bob is coming from. I don't think he's looking to diminish the police department in any way. He's looking to inject some reality into this discussion, okay? So I don't think it's fair that Bob Weir be given that kind of a moniker that he's looking to get rid of the cars.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
I don't think he said he wanted to get rid of the cars.
And
I said that 3 years ago. I said we don't need 5 cars. I said what we need are 2 or 3 cars. Okay, that's what I said when we were having that discussion. And I was in Florida when we had the vote to purchase those. And I recommended against doing that. Okay, that's the truth. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to right-size our budget. We need to right-size it for what the needs are for this town. And frankly, I'm not sure this is reflective. Now, Chris talked about overages. There are some line items, and Bob did too, line items that are way over budget, like uniforms. I don't understand that. We'll have the conversation going forward with Kevin. We'll try to align that, figure it out. What's the right number? I have no idea. But it sure seems pretty high. It sure seems pretty high.
So this this form that Bob put forth, I don't have an issue. I'm not going to argue that line item at all. My concern here is the overtime is cut way too low, and that was basically the only thing I was going to argue with.
So,
and I still think I can do the take-home program with the $16,000, $3,000 cut that you made, and still come under where I need to be. All I'm saying is, I did talk to Bob earlier on the phone and said, are you looking to save 5%, or are you looking to cut these particular line items? Like, it's basically stating, if you're looking to save 5%, I would like some buy-in, and how about I come to you with where I think I could cut, where I think as a department head who runs this daily, where I know that I can cut where I don't need those services. And he stated absolutely, if you want to do that. And so that's where I would be willing to come to you and offer something at $39,000 that doesn't cut my overtime. Because I have a list of how I calculated the overtime, and if you were to cut it to 20, I'm dead in the water. There's certain things that are important, certain things that aren't, that we can cut. Overtime, I don't think, is one of them. But there's other things in the budget that I can cut.
And I would love
And
to.
the uniforms and equipment, though, sir, $20,000. You're not going to hear me argue with it.
all right, and here's another example. I mean, it's a euphemism, right? A euphemism. Civil disturbance gear. Did we really need to buy that? I mean, but here's the point.
It's like an AR-15 or the sidearm the officer carries. You don't need it until you need it. You don't need it until you need it, and that's all I can. That's really the only defense I can have for that. It's just like a police officer. You don't get paid for what you do. You get paid for what you might have to do.
Well, okay, we can have that discussion, because personally, I don't necessarily think we should be putting our police officers in that position. Frankly, I don't think they're trained for it. I don't think they're certified for it, and I don't think we should put them in danger for it.
And I agree with you, and I wouldn't put them out there until they're trained, which we've already hooked up training with Prince William County to do that. Not all of their entirety of civil disturbance training, just the front line of what we would need to do to help them out, like when they called for help for us when Manassas was being overrun.
All right, so just getting back to it.
Yes, sir.
This is called continuous improvement. That's all we're trying to do here. We're trying to right-size this budget and allocate it to match a vision going forward. Now, there was a previous vision over the last couple of years, last 8 years. I think that's shifting. And that's not an attack on anybody. What it is an attack on are expenses. And how do we properly align those expenses to the revenues? That's the basic here. And I think Bob took a very gracious step at doing this, developing a straw man to gain a reaction and to allow us to continue to have this discussion going forward. This is not something that's going to happen tonight. This is not something that's going to happen Monday. This is something that's going to be a conversation going forward. And by the way, I think on our agendas going forward on the work session, pro forma, there should be a line item on the budget, budget discussion, and keep it that way as we go forward. That would be my recommendation. I know, Chris, you want to say something.
I think this approach, for me, it's the same approach that we did in 2014 with the attorney fees. The attorney fees were out of control in 2014 when I came here, and when it was at 110,000. And we kept digging at it. It went to 140 in 2015, 138, then 82, then 48, 59, and now at 64. And I think it's the same thing that we're doing with the budget. It's not like we're cutting anything from the budget. We're reviewing it, because when you look at the numbers, 2014-15, the PD budget was over 42,000. Year 2015-16, it was over 11,000. 16-17, over 199,000, and of course that were for the vehicles. 17-18, they came under 19,000. 18-19, over 35,000, and this past year, 19-20, they were over 64,000. I would love to see a budget where we're able, just like what we did with the attorney fees, where we're able to bring it to a place where we understood, okay, 60, 65 is a good range for the attorney fees. I would love to start seeing that happen with the PD budget. I mean, who would not want to see something where it's balanced? But what's happening at the end of each year is that there is an amount that the council then has to approve to get in line. And that's not the way to run a budget. So that's just my preliminary views on it. This was a good stab, but this stab cannot be complete without the chief's input.
That was my point. That was my point. I am not opposed to some of these, but the chief should have input. He knows. He can talk to his budget.
That's true. That's true. But there are still ways to work around it too, because I know one of the areas that the chief and I talked about was the overtime, the salaries, the overtime amount. Maybe there's a different way in order to structure how the coverage happens, and the only person who knows how to do that best is the man in the chair. Maybe there's another way with in redoing the holiday pay to fall in line with what it is that council may propose, or even the part-time budget. Already we're seeing good traction because we're taking out lane detail, because that used to mess up the accounting of the monies that come in and go out, because we had to have it on a certain side. But I think that's where more discussions probably need to happen, especially with wages, because we have 6 officers, including the chief, and 2 part-time. And if we cannot offer coverage with 6 officers and 2 part-time without having overtime, then the chief may need to relook to see how he's providing coverage. Because I'm not gonna give you my ideas how to provide coverage. I don't have the experience in doing it, but the chief does. And the chief is going to be able to come back when he looks at these numbers and said, here is the best way that he sees fit to provide that coverage. So I think it's a good start. But it's not anything written in stone, because the chief needs input on this. He has to put his initials on this before we go forward.
I would certainly have questions in regards to certain line items and why your opinion would be where you could take away from here and not from here. So that would be something that I would want to discuss.
Yeah. So Bob, you had some input too?
Yeah. I'll be real frank. I intentionally rolled this grenade on the floor, and quite frankly, I'm happy that we're having this discussion. And I think, although it might be acrimonious at points, it's a long overdue discussion. Do I care at the end of the day what adjustments are made? By and large, the answer is no. But if you look at the net admin and the net PD expenditure cuts, you're going to see they're equivalent on a percentage basis. And there was a reason for doing that. With respect to what the chief does or doesn't want to cut, and what he can or what he can't accommodate, I'm open to that discussion. But the discussion had to start someplace. I'm a bit more confrontational than most, so I don't have a problem rolling the grenade out on the floor and letting everybody decide where it's going to go. The only part that I would quibble with is on the vehicle fuels expenditure and on the policy, because that's what it is. This is a policy issue. This is not a PD issue. This is a policy issue when it comes to the vehicles. And there are people out there who say, "Oh God, Bob's targeting the PD's vehicles again." Well, God damn it, I did it a decade ago, and I did it 15 years ago. And it's not a personal thing. It's a policy issue, and it's a policy issue that is replicated across most jurisdictions in the Commonwealth. Look at Prince William County, for example. If you're an officer and you don't reside in Prince William County, that vehicle goes back to the motor pool at the end of shift, or at least that's the way it used to be. And we did this strictly as a cost savings a decade ago or more, simply to save on the fuels and the vehicle maintenance. Does that apply to all of the officers? No, it does not. The chief and the lieutenant are on call 24/7. They take the vehicles home. And the officer that's serving the shift doesn't live in close proximity to the town, well, then it stays in town. That's the policy for us. Yes, there's input required from the chief, but at the end of the day, we'll see that we need to decide. With the rest of the stuff, I mean, like I said, I just threw these out there for discussion. I don't expect us to come to any agreement tonight. In fact, I don't expect us to come to any agreement ever. But I do think the discussion needs to be had over the next 60 days, because quite frankly, I think the budget needs to be dramatically adjusted if we are going to address some long-standing issues. If it is the position of the council as a whole that nothing needs to be done, and we maintain the budget status quo, and we don't address what a variety of residents have come to us about, and what a variety of us believe need to be addressed, then so be it. I'll vote against any maintenance of the budget as it stands. But I think it's a discussion that we need to have, and none of this is personal. This is all numbers. And like I said, this is a preliminary thing. I painted a target on me. I did it willingly. I did it knowing exactly how this discussion would go. But it's a discussion that has to take place, and it's a discussion that we have to take very, very seriously. I mean, I'll get off my soapbox for now, but I put out there when I sent this out a couple of days ago, or actually more than a week ago, that I'm looking for some suggestions on other adjustments or what people don't like about this particular set of adjustments. And to date, I haven't gotten a bit of a response from anybody. I expect that everybody's going to look at the budget in its entirety, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one with issues on particular line items. This is sort of a 50,000-foot view, and if I really wanted to get into it, I could have dramatically reduced other things or increased other things, but that's a discussion for another day. We just need to get the ball rolling. So I'll get off my soapbox because it's drawing late. But I'd like for everybody to think about this over the next week, and I would really like to have some real movement on this at the September meeting.
So I'd just like to say one more thing. It's not my job to argue with you guys. My job is to present my case, and then your job is to tell me what I can and can't have. So at the end of the day, whatever is told to me, I will make it work, and I will sell it to my officers, no matter how pissed off they may be, or angry they may be, or just sad they may be. Okay, at the end of the day, you're in charge. So you haven't heard me argue tonight. I was just a little bit aggravated that I wasn't asked about these things before they were put on paper, because I could have stopped some of these things. Some of them are way off. And then, but I did offer, Bob will tell you, before the elections were even happened, I met with Bob at Tobaccology and offered up all kinds of, up to $47,000 worth of cuts, and he's asking for $39,000. So I'm not saying that I don't want to cut anything.
He'll take it.
Yeah. Well, he took 57,000 of it anyway off of a capital improvement or CIP. Yeah. But I would like to determine if it's a 5% cut, what it would be, because overtime is not something I would cut. And I have reasons why I've asked for the overtime, and that's overtime's not a pizza party or a Christmas party. It's officers on duty here to protect you and the residents of this town. It's not frivolous. So that's all I'm.
Can I just answer to that, or just make a comment? I think what we all have to understand here, and I think Bob or Chris may have said it, it's our fiduciary responsibility.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. Okay, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. The other thing is, this really isn't our budget. We have to live with it. And so for us to take another look at it, to re-examine it, is a responsibility that we owe the people of this town. And I think we need to understand that. And it's not an attack on anybody or anything personal, but that's our responsibility. So I just want to not take any more oxygen out of the room so Marchand can talk.
Bob did brief this to me initially. It's helpful tonight to have the explanation, and I did not allot the time to go through line by line and understand it. The in-house expenditures on the first line items, I think I understand it, given the COVID conditions, and we're not going to conferences and traveling much. So I will follow up with Bob to understand or make sure my assumptions are correct on the salaries, wages, and convention and education. So on the police department, my question is what the chief already alluded to. You had already put you came to the last council with a number of budget changes. I'd be interested to see. I think council ultimately did not make any amendments to, but you did come forward with ways to amend it. I'd be interested in seeing what that list was that was provided to the council. In terms of not being sustainable, I do not believe that Roberta would make that arbitrarily, that there's a reason behind it. I'd like the opportunity to understand the impetus of that comment and understand more about how we address it and his recommendation on how going forward. It seems like a lot of this has to be based on the car thing. I'd like to understand more about that policy. And I'll follow up with the various folks then. In terms of the community park, I guess maintenance is a different line item than the CIP in terms of specific repair or improvements. We do, I think, need to look at bathroom facilities. That's the biggest limitation right now. Bathroom facilities, people plans to go. So if we can move forward on that, I think during the vision plan, we had some estimates on what it would take to turn in that back bedroom to outward-facing bathrooms. I would like to see that as a priority and maybe get some estimates on what that is. In terms of community development, the comp plan, Bob, we did all the updates to the comp plan in-house. We had allocated $30,000 for the update of the plan. We brought in, I just forgot the name of the consultant. Berkeley Group came in. We had allotted monies for the zoning ordinance update, which was the higher dollar amounts, probably what you're referring to. And then we shelved the comp plan update. Really depends upon how much we want to put into that document. It's pretty easy to go and kind of update and cut out some of the extraneous stuff. I liked an idea that Emily had earlier today. I'm not throwing you under the bus when I say this, but do as much as we can to take off the fat, so to speak, and stuff that's obviously needs to be updated, and then the point where we need to bring in or could bring in a consultant to kind of put the polish on it, run some statistics and some other best practices. I think that would provide some relief to the staff, but I would agree it probably needs to be a lower amount given we're going to try to do much of it in-house. Okay, that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just one thing that I did want to address is, just like Roberto said, what was not sustainable about the PD budget was the fact that we wanted to equalize and
the real estate tax rate at the same time of increasing the police department budget, that is not sustainable. And I'll stand by that you cannot cut revenue and increase expenses, and that is not something that is smart to do. So I stand by Roberto with that statement, that is what is not sustainable about it. Cutting it to a portion of removing the real estate in 5 years is what the plan was with the previous council, and that is what our recommendation had been, or his recommendation and Mr. Shiro prior to me getting here, along with my recommendation when I finally got here. So that's something that is what is not sustainable. Now, if you guys do not want to equalize the real estate tax rate and don't mind increasing it when the times require it for some of these larger items, then that it would be sustainable. But you can't have everything at the same time. And that was what he was addressing by it not being sustainable while cutting the real estate taxes. So that's just what I wanted to address.
Anything?
Oh, I really enjoyed my time this week and previous week in our discussions. I'm very excited about proposing some ideas. I'm on board with working with the park building and seeing exactly what we could do with that and ideas and bringing some revenue to offset some of the things that we'd like to do. I definitely want to have a discussion with Chief Lance. So that will take place, but that's where I am.
Anything else for this discussion?
Chief, would you suggest the individuals that have discussion items to just talk to you one-on-one, or is it doesn't matter?
Whatever you want to do, you just let me know. I'm willing to talk to anybody.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's a good idea, but I also think that we have these discussions at our work sessions too. You know, we used to have the finance committee and all of that. Better to have it out in the open here in front of everybody, with everybody. I think that's the place where we need to really have that kind of discussion too. You can have your individual discussions without a doubt, lobbying, what have you, but we should be really working to make these adjustments here in front of everybody.
I would agree, Joe, with the chief here being part of the conversation. Yes, sir, I agree.
Because that's what we used to do with the finance committee. Chief was always there.
Yeah.
Always in our discussions, and admin. So I just want to make one more thing. I had always felt it was important, especially in the COVID period, that we really, and I'm not sure where the revenue was heading. I'm not sure if it's going to continue to plateau, go up, go down. But I've always felt it was important to work budgets, to do an exercise, and Bob, tell me if I'm crazy, of different scenarios. I've always felt that was important, so you have a sense of where you might have to go in the future if things go downhill. All right, so like whether it's a 5% or a 10% or a 15%, it's still not a bad thing to do, so you're prepared. I'm not feeling the confidence in myself right now that we're going to be prepared for a downturn if it comes and continues. Go ahead, Bob.
That's one of the reasons, and thank you, Joe. That's one of the reasons I rolled this particular grenade out in the way that I did. I'm not confident either. I don't know where we're going to stand fiscally in 2 months or 6 months, and quite frankly, I'm concerned. And in looking at the revenues and in looking at the diminished liquid assets that we have as opposed to what we had, say, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I don't think that financially we're in a position to weather a significant downturn. If COVID extends longer than anticipated, and I'm not even sure what that means anymore, given that, what is this now, month 4, month 5? I mean, I haven't worn socks since March. I've worn a tie once since then. So, life for me is significantly different than it was. I think we have to be mindful of where we may or may not be in 6 months. And I think that that's one of the reasons I put in there that FY21 emergency fund. If we've got some excess revenue that we could stash away to cover, unexpected expenditures or unexpected decreases in the revenue stream, I think we need to start having that. You look at the streetscape, for example. We're talking about equalized tax rates. Well, that's been a discussion for God knows how many years now. But you also have to realize that in the interim, quite a number of regressive taxes for a variety of different programs have been instituted over the last 10 to 15 years. Meals tax, cigarette tax, you name it. If you go back to the origination of the meals tax and the fundamental basis or what the reason for establishing the meals tax was. And I was there. I fought like hell against it. But the expenditure or the establishment of the meals tax was specifically and only for the streetscape and was supposed to sunset. And then it turned into exactly what I said it would turn into, which was a slush fund and an operational expense. And here we stand, 15 years later with an unfinished portion of the streetscape, specifically that part of the park, and we've got no money for it. Yet we've been collecting streetscape funds through the meals tax for the last, 7 years without any actual construction or takings? And that's why I did this. I did this to, quite frankly, get some people pissed off and get some people looking at the budget. It's an exercise. It's an exercise that we need to do. And I hope everybody's taking it as seriously as they seem to be tonight. And I want to have a lengthy discussion about this, and that's going to involve everybody. It's going to involve the chief. It's going to involve the treasurer, every member of council. But like I said, this is just a starting point. This is just something to get the discussion rolling. But frankly, I'm happy that there are people that aren't happy about it. That's the way it should be. Nothing about a town budget is easy, especially when you're talking year over year. And I'm going to drop off here because my battery power is just about dead.
Thank God.
Yeah, all right. But I'm glad that everybody's looking at this, and I'm glad that everybody has an opinion on it. And, Joe and I are sitting on the finance committee, and we're coming in and looking at the bills on a weekly basis and, having discussions with Roberto and Chris and Emily. So if you've got suggestions, well, by all means, please send them. I've got no pride in authorship, and, I'm not going to take anything personally either on the cuts or the expenditure side. So whatever you want, give me your input, please.
I have one point to add. I've never been a big fan of the outgoing council preparing the budget for the new council. I don't know how to address it. I don't know how to change it. I've just never been a big fan. And when I came on the council in 2014, Bob was the one who did the budget that I adopted. Remember? Bob was on the council. He wasn't.
No, I wasn't.
No, okay.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, it's Jay. Sorry, it's Jay. You guys look alike. Sorry.
I look nothing like Jay.
So I've never been a fan. It's funny because I felt bad about it, and I was moving from the old council onto this council, and I felt bad that we were preparing a budget for a new council to take over. So we do need to review it. This council's responsibility is to review the budget. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, anything else, guys? Next agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Next
I
agenda.
move to adjourn. I'll
Okay,
second.
I got a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Enjoy the
Good
rest
night,
of the week,
all.
Bob.
All right.